Can we get you folks to sit down, please, so we can get started? Thank you. Okay, I guess we can get going here. It's December 3rd Planning Board meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone. Would you join in a Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Catherine, you want to call the roll, please?
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Arena?
Here.
Mr. Kashani? Mr. Kosel?
Here.
Mr. Malka?
Here.
Mr. Mixel?
Here.
Mr. Rampy?
Here.
Mr. Benway?
Here.
Mr. Sacramento?
Okay, we've got a pretty lengthy agenda here this evening. We can get started, I suppose. Why don't we start with the stable matter first, the creative shell? Go ahead and read that.
Creative Shell applicant is requesting a sign approval for a business located 807 Ridge Road, Webster Woods Plaza, for a 27.3 square foot building mounted sign under the code of Town of Webster.
Is there an applicant here for that? Oh yeah, come on down. Just go up to the podium right there, and you can let us know what you're proposing, okay?
So my name is Janet Lip. That's 2 P's. And I'm the studio manager of the Rochester Creativity Shell. We are a not-for-profit coming out of Houston. We have 3 chapters, and we recently moved to Webster from Brighton, 12 Corners in Brighton. We're interested in having a sign put up. We're located in the Webster Woods Plaza between Pontillo's and Hooligans. And nobody can find us because we don't have a sign. So what we're interested in is just, I believe she wrote down the creator of the Creativity Shell. It's not myself, so I would call her my boss. Shalancia Daniel. You may have seen the RV parked in the plaza recently. She drove up from Houston to be part of the Maker Faire. We were at the Maker Faire. So I think she wants black, just black letters going across the 2 studio spaces that we have. That just says Creativity Shell. It's very simple.
So it's not, the sign isn't lit, the lighting is just the existing lighting that's here now?
Yes, there is I believe there's an existing hanging light.
Ones that are in there, okay. All right, and the size of it conforms, I don't know, is anybody any concerns or anything? Yeah. You guys okay? All right, you want to do a seeker on that, Jared?
Town of Webster Planning Board consider a request by applicant Vital Signs for a 27.3 square foot building mounted sign for Creativity Shell located at 807 Ridge Road, Webster Woods Plaza. The Planning Board classifies the proposed action as a type 2 action under section 617.5C2 for the state environmental quality review regulations and therefore is not subject to further review.
Okay, a motion to second.
Second.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Rampy? Mr. Mixel? Mr. Kosel?
Aye.
Mr. Kashani?
Aye. Aye. Okay. We have to make a motion to approve now? So, what do you want to do?
I'll make a motion to approve Creative Shell applicant for a sign for the business located 807 Ridge Road, where Webster Wood Plaza is for 27 square foot sign for Webster per the drawing number, job number 19-881 as applied for.
Second.
Mr. Arena.
Aye.
Mr. Kozel.
Aye.
Mr. Rampey.
Aye.
Mr. Mixel.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Malta.
Aye.
Mr. Kashani.
Aye. Okay, you're all set. Good luck with the project there.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
We do have a couple of public hearings here tonight, so we've got a good-sized crowd. If anybody is wishing to speak, we do have a sign-in sheet, as we did at the last meeting. It's at the back of the room up this aisle. If you would sign in, please. Okay, go ahead, please.
Aldi Expansion, applicant Aldi Inc. is requesting concept review for a 3,312 square foot expansion to the existing facility located 815 Ridge Road. The facility is located in MC, Medium Intensity Commercial District, per Dakota Town of Webster.
Can you guys see the board okay?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Tim Shea. I'm with APD Engineering and Architecture. I'm here to present to you the proposed expansion of the existing Aldi's grocery store located at 915 Ridge Road. The proposed expansion is what we call a long wall expansion. It's along the eastern edge of the building. We're proposing to push that wall of the building out 19 feet 5 inches. I have another exhibit here if you want to see that. Into the existing parking lot. That 19 feet 5 inches will give Aldi enough room within the store to add another aisleway to the store. As part of that, they'll basically reconstruct the entire interior of the store. With the wall-on-wall expansion, it'll require the reconstruction of the front entryway, reconstruction of the front sidewalk and front car rail area. The existing parking spaces on site will be restriped to 9-foot stalls. A lot of them right now are 10-foot stalls. By going to the 9-foot stalls, we're able to recapture the parking spaces that are going to be lost with the expansion. So we'll actually increase the number of parking spaces by 1. The existing landscaping that's along the parking along that side, we're going to preserve that landscaping. We're going to have that still at that location. And we're also going to keep the other landscaping out around the side there. The ADA spaces that are along that side, we're going to relocate those. Hard to go through, but right out here is the expansion we're doing. The ADA spaces that are good on the side are going to be right out here. Right outside the front entry of the store. We're going to do an asphalt overlay to make sure that everything meets ADA compliance in that area. The signage on the building, right now there's the Aldi signage and then there's a food market sign. The food market sign is going to come off the building and they're going to keep the existing signage as it is. They'll just replace the veneer with the new logo, with the new Aldi logo. As part of the expansion, we're also going to be adding in a new fire sprinkler system. We'll be making a connection out into Ridge Road and bringing a 6-inch fire line down into the building for that fire sprinkler system. On the interior of the building, they'll be installing all new energy efficient refrigeration and freezer units, new shelving, new lighting, new signage. So when the store is all complete, when the work's all complete, it'll look like a brand new store in the interior. The overall process takes them about 20 weeks from beginning to end. And during that 20-week period, there's about a 5-week period where the store will be closed down. They'll let everyone in the community know when that period's going to occur, and they'll also do kind of a grand opening when the store bell comes back up. I think that's all I have right now, so if there's any questions.
The biggest thing is just the 19-foot addition onto the sides, basically As far as out exterior?
Yes, yeah, it's just pushing out that one side of the wall, the 19 feet 5 inches, to get us the additional 3,300 square feet.
So the cart racks would be outside of that then?
Yes, the store will actually look almost identical to the way it does now. We just kind of shift the wall out, and then they reconstruct everything else to make it look very similar.
Does that affect your parking lot?
It won't, because we're doing the restriping. We're actually going to preserve as many spaces that are out there today.
Is this similar to the store in Penfield?
I'm sorry?
Is it similar to the store in Penfield?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the expansions, they've been doing those nationwide in the area, so there's several stores in the area. They've just finished with the Canandaigua, they just finished doing the one in Farmington, just finished doing one in Penn, so they're kind of getting around the area.
Exterior is going to be basically the same.
Yes, it'll be almost identical, yeah.
I don't see it. Project, anybody? Again, this is just for sketch plan review you're here for tonight.
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody, any concerns, questions? Just an addition on the existing, all these. I will say that that store, when it came in, there's a lot of opposition to it,
Okay.
which you usually have, I'm sure. But ultimately, it turned out to be a neat, clean operation. It has, I think, a good business, obviously so, with the addition they're putting onto it. It has been well maintained, so I compliment them for that.
Glad to hear that.
Okay, anybody, any issues or concerns? Lighting, exterior lighting, no changes in the lighting?
They'll have new additional building lighting around the building itself to illuminate the parking lot, but the existing parking lot lighting will basically remain exactly as it is. They already upgraded that to an LED system, so it's more energy efficient.
Okay, anybody, any issues or concerns, questions? Nobody? All right, well, I guess with that, you did a good job presenting.
I did have one question. Is it possible to get the seeker process going?
I'm sorry?
Is it possible to get the seeker process going on this at this point, or?
Well, it really should be coming in for preliminary to do that. That would be the first step. That would be, when you come in for your preliminary, that would be, once you present what you're showing at the preliminary hearing, then we will have the seeker for that after that.
Okay.
And then the motion for approval.
Okay. So to get back before the board for the preliminary hearing, just
Yeah,
work
it
with.
shouldn't impact you in any way, though.
No.
I mean, whether you get it now or you get it then, you can't do anything until you have that in, until you.
No, I know, yeah.
Preliminary, so it'll be based, the preliminary will be based on what we see at the secret, for secret.
Okay.
What impacts there are, which assuming there aren't a lot, but we have to go that process.
Okay. Very good.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming in tonight. Yep. go ahead.
Seasoning Thai Bistro, applicant is requesting sign approval for a business located 657 Ridge Road for a 20.6 square foot building mounted sign under Dakota Town Webster.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry about my accent. Okay,
Be close to the microphone.
I'm the owner of Seasoning Thai Bistro. It's a Thai restaurant. It's going to be located at 657 Ridge Road. It used to be the Jasmine Asian Cuisine, and I took over that place, and I am here to get a sign approval to put in the new sign on the building to outstanding. And I picked a vital sign company to design it. And all letters is gonna be the lip letters with a symbol of sign with a 3 times 16 inches.
So this is your sign that you're proposing. What building is this? Where is this actually located?
6'5".
Oh, the little plastic? Oh, okay. Okay, so what is this? Is the sign lit?
Yes, sir.
You have lights?
Yes.
Lights on this?
Yes.
Inside the light, or are you shining a light on it?
Inside, yes.
Okay. So the sign really is just the letters, that's all I'm seeing here, right? Just the letters?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Will it cover up the old sign, the area that, the facade that the old sign was on? Will this cover it up, or will they have to resurface that or repaint that area? The sign was smaller.
Yes, they're gonna remove the old sign, that's Jasmine Asian Cuisine out, and then put a new sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but the backing will, if it's smaller or whatever the size is, the back of it might have.
A little bit smaller, but it's very close to the same site.
Obviously conforms. Yeah, right? Okay. Anybody any issues with it? Looks like a simple, okay, add to a seeker on it, I guess.
Town of Webster Planning Board consider a request by applicant Seasoning Thai Bistro for a 20.6 square foot building mounted sign located at 657 Ridge Road. The planning board classifies the proposed action as a type 2 action under section 617.5C2 of the state environmental quality review regulations and therefore is not subject to further review.
Second.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Kashani? Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Koso?
Aye.
Mr. Mixel?
Aye.
Mr. Rampy?
Aye. Okay, motion for,
I'll make a motion to approve the sign for Seasoning Thai Restaurant located at 657 Ridge Road for a 20.6 foot sign per the drawing, job number 191245.
Second.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Koso?
Aye.
Mr. Rampy?
Aye.
Mr. Mixel? Aye. Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Kashani?
Aye. Okay, you're all set. Good luck with your restaurant.
Thank you so much.
You have coupons? Just kidding. Go ahead.
Gerber Collision applicant is requesting a sign approval for a business located at 2111 Ridge Road for 75 square foot of building mounted signage under the Code of Town of Webster.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Yost, and I'm here representing Architectural Graphics, our customer Gerber Collision and Glass. The address I have is 2111 Empire Boulevard, so I believe that is the address I have for them. And what they have here is they have an existing letter set on the front facade of the building, and it says New Look Collision Center. And what they would like us to do is remove that and replace it with a new sign that would be an internally illuminated sign, and it will be with LEDs. And it would cover up pretty much all the space of the existing sign, and if there's, a little showing or something, obviously we would repair it, the facade, so it would look new. So that's what they're requesting.
Debbie, your sign, the way it shows on the drawing,
Yes,
it shows it like it's white. I'm assuming that's backlit?
yes, it's internally illuminated, it's like a white polycarbonate panel.
Okay, but by code in Webster for signs, the white can't be showing white light. It has to be darkened in the back. You can, so if the light is on at night, just the figures are showing in the white or whatever color. But the white area you have there
Yes.
has to be blackened in the back. If it's confusing, check with Jeff tomorrow at the town.
Okay,
So for the record, it should conform to what the code shows for signs, okay?
okay, I can just say that I know this is their brand, you know what I mean, this is their uniform look across all their stores. I believe, you know, they have 800 some locations, and that's, I don't know how they would do that, but I
Well,
don't.
what we've had in the past, other signs similar to this, and they're white like this,
Yes.
but at night, just the figures show the white is blacked out in the back. It's shielded in the back, and that's part of the guidelines that we have.
Okay.
Okay? It can
Okay.
be lined in the back, white in the front, but lined so that when the lights are on, just the figures light up, if that makes any sense.
I mean, do you feel that you would see the LED strips, because you would not see them?
You'd see the LED, you could see the letters, but you wouldn't see the bright white. What's white here would not be white at nighttime. You would see the Gerber collision and glass. And your logo that's on there, that shows, but
Yes.
the white is blacked out in the back.
Okay,
The idea of that is to lighten down bright lights glaring.
right,
That was the intent of putting that in there, okay?
okay, all right.
If you have a question with it, you can talk. I mean, the sign is okay. There's no modification to the sign other than nighttime.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do you have any suggestions, Mike?
Okay? Yeah. Well, it's in our guidelines, yes. Well, you really don't have to do anything. Your drawing is okay. We can improve it. The only thing we're saying is before you put it up, just modify it so that it conforms to what. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, I don't have an issue. I don't think board is. Yeah, no, I'll hold you up with it. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about. So the white doesn't glare at night, that's all. There's several of them around town like that, similar situations where the back is just blacked out. They put black paint, I don't know what they do, but it's, no, stay up there. Go ahead, Dan. You can stay up there. We'll finish it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. You can, and again, tomorrow if you want, get a hold of Jeff and we'll deal with it. Okay, so that's your sign. Anybody, any concerns, questions? Okay, we're on a routine with this tonight. Derek, you want to do a seeker on that?
The Town of Webster Planning Board considered the request by applicant Deborah Yost for a 75 square foot building mounted sign for Gerber collision and glass located at 2111. This is actually Empire Boulevard, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Empire Boulevard. The planning board classifies a proposed action as a type 2 action under section 617.5C2 of the State Environmental Quality Review Regulations, and therefore is not subject to further review.
Second.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Kosel?
Aye.
Mr. Mixel?
Aye.
Mr. Rampy? Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Kashani?
Okay, motion for removal for Gerber, and but we wanted to make it, we want to include that the sign needs to be modified for nighttime without the glass.
I'll make a motion for Gerber Collision, sign approval for Gerber Collision located at 2111 Empire Boulevard for a 75 square foot sign. And we're going to change it a little bit so you can't see the light during the night. The light's going to be, white is going to be blocked out, just to let it work here.
Second.
Mr. Kosel?
Aye.
Mr. Mixel?
Aye.
Mr. Rampy? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Kashani?
Okay, you're all set. So tomorrow, maybe you want to do is just double check it, so you get it right, so you don't have to. Okay? So
Thank
you're
you
all
very
set.
much for your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, we've got the car wash, and this is a public hearing, so public notice of this was published in the Webster Herald, just for the record. Go ahead.
Webster Woods Car Wash, applicant Webster Woods Plaza LLC is requesting preliminary final public hearing for a car wash operation located at Webster Woods Plaza on Ridge Road, west of 5 Mile Line Road. Proposed use is a permitted use in the MC Medium Intensity Commercial District under the Code of Town of Webster.
Chris Nadler, General Counsel at Mark IV Enterprises and Webster Woods Plaza LLC, the owner of the property, that you know as Webster Woods Plaza. With me here tonight is our Director of Engineering, Brian Powers, and Mike Bogajewski from BME Associates. We're here tonight asking for preliminary site plan approval with conditions, the condition being that prior to the final site plan approval, we would get all required variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. As you know, we've been in a number of times. The plan has been modified based on input from town staff and planning board members. And I'm going to turn it over now to Brian and Mike so that they can explain the site plan and the changes we've made.
Evening, Mike Bogajewski with BME Associates. Like Chris had mentioned, we have been before the board previously through the PRC and concept review process. And I know the board's fairly familiar with it. I'll give just a quick recap and some additional info based on the final design now that has that we've submitted after the concept review. The layout is consistent with that concept plan that was reviewed last time we were before the planning board. We had modified it to rotate the building and lose one of the soft wash bays with comments from the board and through the PRC process. So that remains consistent with the final design. The entrances are both on the south side of that lot. Again, consistent with that concept plan, that allows traffic to both enter and exit and utilize the internal driveways around the plaza, and doesn't conflict with the main entrance to the plaza. The utilities for the site are all internal to the lot. Water and sewer will be connected to existing utilities. The stormwater will be handled by the existing stormwater management facility that's been constructed for the plaza as a whole. The final design information that we've submitted to the town includes all the design info for the utilities, and also includes some additional info on traffic within the plaza. I know that was one concern that had come up during the PRC and concept review stage, was just how the traffic worked internally into the plaza. So we worked with town staff to identify some of the timeframes, and we went out and got some traffic counts and provided that for review to the town also. I know that the board is pretty familiar with it, but if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Just like Chris said, we're here seeking preliminary approval with the condition that we'll obviously need the use variance from the zoning board.
How many cars will you be able to marshal waiting to get their car washed?
Say that again?
How many cars will you be able to marshal waiting, for people waiting to get their cars washed? This layout provides a tunnel for the car wash, and then the laser wash touchless bay, and then the two self-wash. So there's 2 lanes that enter that tunnel car wash area, and we have approximately 10 spaces for cars to queue there in those 2 lanes. There's basically 2 pay stations for that tunnel, and then a separate lane to enter the touchless and self-wash bays. So the 2 lanes hold 10 cars apiece, or a
Total, approximately 10 cars total.
There is a list of PRC comments. You've got a copy of this or what? I don't know if you want to address these. There's about 19 comments
I don't believe that we received
that
those.
were given. Maybe not. We try and keep it as a surprise. Happens that way sometimes, unfortunately. Pass that down to him, give it to him. What's that? Yeah, you should have one. You don't have it? I don't know where I got it. Somebody gave it to me.
If you would, to read each
So,
one of them, so.
I think just receiving these now, we'll obviously go through them and work with town staff to address them. I'm glancing through them. I think a lot of it seems pretty technical with relation to the plans. So we'll obviously work through to provide some revised plans and address these comments. I don't know, is there any specific ones that you have questions on?
Well, no, just,
We'll work
you
with
know
Jeff
what?
to.
Why don't we do this? If we make preliminary approval, subject to you getting your variances, why don't we hold those? We can move forward and then address those at that hearing. How's that? Sure. Work for you guys too? Okay, I think that simplifies it for
I
everybody.
don't see anything here that we can address, but just in lieu of going through them line by line in front of everybody, that I think
Yeah,
that makes
there's
life-
quite a
makes
few
life-
there.
Yeah, it makes life a little easier.
Primarily, they're all engineering details.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. John is skimming down the
Okay,
list.
so let's do it that way, right?
Sure.
Okay. More simply, where your entrance comes in off of Ridge Road,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows a turn. It looks like a laser, like drew pictures on this thing. There's lines all over it, and you lost me.
There's a lot of easements that cover that basically the frontage along Ridge Road. And so there's the existing pavement and entrance that comes off a ridge to the plaza.
Yes.
And then there's basically a long island that'll get created with the new entrances on the south side of that lot. But a lot of that line work is existing easements. There's town drainage easements, there's a town sewer easement along the front there.
Yeah,
That's all.
I see those.
Yep.
Now, when you come in, as you progress going south into the project, you have the cars that are existing right now, the parking area,
Correct.
designated parking
Yep.
spaces. So you've got from there to that berm you have, or your curb, I
Yep,
guess.
that's-
It shows like 24 feet there. But then your lot line or property line or your lease line, I don't know, what is that line?
So,
Is that a lease line, the dark one?
yeah, that would be the property line, the lot line for lot 4. Yep.
Okay,
It cuts down through the middle of that drive.
Yeah, so so the 24 feet goes quite a ways into the parking area.
So the 24 feet is from the edge of the existing parking stalls to the new curb line that would get created to create that drive aisle.
Okay, so that doesn't cause an issue? You don't feel that's an issue?
No, it shouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay. Okay. And your flow of traffic through, you're coming in, you go circle around, you come through the car wash,
Yep,
you come out the other side. Now, where you have your vacuums in there, I was looking at this with Jeff yesterday. When you come around to go in to get your vacuum, if you will, you have an egress coming out of there, but to go into it, a person gets their car washed, they have to go all the way back around to the enter only, and then cross over and then into the...
Yeah, we kept it as an exit only just to keep the traffic separated that are coming, because mainly your traffic is going to come around from the plaza entrance and come in from the south to enter that tunnel lane, the entrance to the tunnel lane, or go into the south wash, laser wash bay. And then typically, if you're going to use the vacuums, it's post car wash, which is why we kind of set up that layout, and that seemed to work for the.
So if they go through the self-wash, then they can just come through.
Exactly. Typically, it ends up being post car wash when most people are using those vacuums.
Okay. And then your lighting, exterior lighting, same as it's in the plaza in Russell, right?
Same as in the plaza, and we did include one of the comments that the PRC was to add another light pole near the entrance, the existing entrance, to add it's a little dark in that corner, so we added one there.
You know, that's Dave, you go there quite a bit, don't you? The entrance going in over there, that's kind of, you're driving down the road, that's a hard spot to find to pull in there. You might want to consider a light there of some sort.
Yep, we did add an additional light at the,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, that's what
I
I'm talking
do-
about. Good,
I do
okay.
remember that comment from before.
Okay. All right, that's all I'm thinking about right now. Anybody any concerns, questions?
No, it just doesn't seem like all they have is an area to hold 10 cars waiting to get their car washes, but like Royal has backup for 30 cars, and I don't know, Delta Sonic's a whole lot more than that. If a lot of people want to get their car washed, where are they gonna wait?
Well, I don't know. I guess if there's that many cars, they're doing a heck of a good business, and if there's that many cars, you just drive on by and come back later, I suppose. I don't know. There's only so much room there, so you can only do so much.
Sure. And I think, obviously with the layout revisions, we try to provide as much queuing as possible.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a balancing act for queuing and providing the layout that kind of worked for the board members also. One of the biggest things was to make sure that cars exiting could use that southern exit towards the rear of the plaza, which allows you to either go back out to Ridge or circle back around to 5 Mile Line.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see that as the main way out, only because with the DK Dance Studio and the amount of kids and their parents that are, you go there 4:30, 5, 6 o'clock at night, it's unbelievable. Can't find a parking spot, all kinds of kids walking all over the place. And that's my main concern
Sure.
with a car wash at this location.
Okay, anybody else?
With, in regards to, unfortunately, we don't have, as a board, a copy of the PRC comments. Received them.
Sure.
But in your presentation, you mentioned that there has been some kind of traffic study done that was submitted to the town. That we have not seen either. Are you able to summarize what the results of that study?
I can give a brief summary. It was part of the submittal application. It's part of our engineering technical data that we submitted. But working with town staff, we identified 2 peak times to do traffic counts internal to the plaza, and we looked at both entrances. We looked at basically a weekday evening time and a Saturday afternoon time. That allowed us to do some existing traffic counts, get a baseline of existing traffic and cars that are exiting and entering those 2 entrances off of Ridge and off of 5 Mile Line, and create like a distribution of traffic internal to the plaza site. Not so much looking at traffic on the external roadways, but internal entrances. And then we looked at the proposed trip generations from the car wash, and basically with the existing traffic counts that we noticed, it's basically 2 to 3 cars maximum queuing during that peak evening time.
In which direction?
Or peak. 2 cars, it was 2 cars max to Ridge Road, 3 cars max to 5 Mile Line at each entrance during existing. That was the peak queuing and peak stack cars that we saw at each entrance. And then adding in the proposed traffic.
So when you say peak queuing in the entrance, you're saying within the plaza itself?
Within the plaza itself, yeah.
Not
external.
external.
We're looking at, the comments during the PRC review process were, how does that traffic internal to the plaza work? So that's what we took a look at.
You didn't look at stacking on Ridge Road itself, trying to make a left-hand turn into this
No, sir.
development?
No.
That's the area of the biggest problem, is trying to make a left-hand turn into this development coming from 5 Mile Line and heading west. And then also trying to make a left-hand turn out of the development onto Ridge Road. You didn't look at that at all?
I think they did you guys modified it to allow the going around the back of the plaza to go out on the 5 Mile Line Road too, didn't you?
some of the main concerns that we talked about previously were that traffic coming within that plaza, so if cars are trying to exit to either side of the entrances, the traffic on Ridge Road and traffic on 5 Mile Lane is existing traffic, and we're looking at kind of that distribution within the plaza was the concern that we try to get a handle on.
And then what would that stat change to with the car wash being there?
Based on the proposed trip gen numbers for the car wash, it only added one car stacked at each entrance during that peak hour time. Even peak hour 5 to 6 time and 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday.
From 3 to 4 cars?
Yeah.
On your cover letter, there was a comment that I'm really kind of curious about. It says, residents of the Websterwood Townhouse community will also be able to directly access the car wash without having to travel out on the 5 Mile line. We don't have a big enough view of the site plan to see where that is coming from.
There is basically an existing driveway that connects to that Webster Woods Townhouse development, just south of where the car wash lot 4 is.
Is that an improved access right now?
It's an existing access that was built with the plaza, and it's part of the driveway. It connects basically to that rear drive aisle.
So part of the solution is to take the traffic load and send it through a townhouse community?
No, that's not. There's an existing driveway.
What's going to prevent that?
There's already an existing drive aisle, main access out to 5 Mile behind the plaza with parking on that side.
That group of townhouses there, is that its only access?
No, sir.
The 5 Mile line? That townhouse, the only way we get to 5 miles through the backside of the plaza?
No. Brian Powers with Mark 4 on behalf of Websterwood Plaza. The townhouse development has a dedicated road through it off the 5 Mile line. This is just a secondary access. I think the idea was when the plaza was built, it was a way for the residents of the townhouses to access the plaza without going out on the 5 Mile line.
So knowing this is back, when people start coming in and using the facility, we've already established that your intent is to have them be able to go out on the 5 Mile line, either through the plaza or around the backside. Again, what is going to prevent the customers from going through the residence?
We could sign it if that would please the board, but quite frankly, the access that the plaza has to 5 Mile line is a fairly decent access. The only reason somebody would cut through the townhouses is if they're going to take a right on the 5 Mile line to head south, where they can do that at our plaza access to 5 Mile line very easily.
This year does not advance the site plan, correct?
That's correct. We paid some good money to create that well before we started spinning things around and twisting things around, but that's the that's the general look, and the message we're trying to say is that the car wash building, we want to reflect some of the architecture that's in the plaza building.
Okay, again, this was a public hearing. I think there was a gentleman, you asked to speak? Sir, did you ask to speak? Yeah, it's a public hearing, sure. Come up, just give us your name and address. Did you sign in? Yeah. Okay, just come up and give us your, in regard to this. Sure. Sure, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, evening. I'm Joe U-Haul. I live in Webster on Bluestone Hauler, over off of State Road. The reason I have a question is because I come out of that plaza during the middle of the day, any day of the week, coming out of Hooligans after lunch, trying to get onto Ridge Road. It is impossible to get onto Ridge Road. Is there going to be a dedicated right-hand turn lane set up to make a right-hand turn? Because you can't make a left without getting killed. literally,
Yeah.
in that area? Or are you going to expand the road getting out of 5 Mile Line and put a light in at 5 Mile Line? Because coming down that hill to this intersection is almost a blind shot. And then there are cars backed up at the light going north onto Ridge Road. You're going to need another light up there, guys, if you're going to be backing up with cars, even if it's only 10 in a queue or a few coming out. Somebody's going to have a real serious accident at one of those two. So my question to the town board would be, are you guys looking at expanding something on Ridge Road or putting in a dedicated right-hand turning lane and requiring people going out onto Ridge Road from the plaza not to be able to make a left? That's the question I have for you guys.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have them address that. Brian, you want to address that?
As far as the access to Ridge Road, I believe the plaza is already striped for a right-hand only and a left-hand only exit. There's 3 lanes coming into the plaza. One's an entrance and 2 are exit lanes. So there is a dedicated right-hand turn lane. Now, whether people are pulling over far enough when they are making a left to allow somebody to take a right, I don't know that. As far as a light on our 5 Mile Line entrance, that entrance is fairly close to the Ridge Road intersection, which is lighted, which was greatly improved several years ago with a variety of turn lanes in either direction. And from our knowledge, getting out onto the 5 Mile Line is a lot easier if you want to make the ultimate trip westerly on Ridge Road. Come out the 5 Mile Line, take a left, wait your turn at the signal and take a left rather than waiting for the stream of traffic on Ridge Road. And people seem to figure that out that are coming and going to the plaza, and that's why that entrance is there.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in regard to this?
Ken Corbis, 755 Mile Line Road. I also own Computer Works Pro, located at 696 Ridge Road, so I happen to be on both sides of this.
Managed to get a commercial in them.
Well, yeah. Bring me your computer and then sit in line trying to get out on Ridge Road. I generally like to encourage new business in Webster, but my main concern that this is not an approved use for the property. That's my biggest concern, but my also very big concern is that people are creatures of habit, and I don't see people coming into the exit one way and leaving it another. I mean, I've been to NASCAR races and football games and everything. People go in and they come out the same way they went in. They're not going to go find some back road somewhere to go out. They're going to come in the main entrance and they're going to go out the main entrance. So that means that there's going to be more cars at the 5 Mile Line and Ridge Road exit or intersection. And although there were some improvements that were made, that is notoriously the worst intersection in all of Webster. I can attest to that because I go through it a dozen times a day or more. I live on 5 Mile, my business is on Ridge, and the traffic is bad at rush hour, but it's also bad during other times of the day as well. I can sit through 9 lights between my store and 5 Mile. And I can also, it's impossible to turn left out of my store, and we haven't even opened Country Max yet. So I find it difficult, to add more traffic to that. And again, I hope the board considers those concerns before you approve this.
Okay, thank you. The thing is, this is an application that is into us right now, into the planning board, but it is not technically an allowed use in that area for a car wash. So, which means from here, we can give it a preliminary approval just to keep the ball going with it. It then has to go to the ZBA. And any concerns like that would have to be directed there. So, okay, anything else? Anybody, any other questions at this point? We're gonna have it back, and once it goes to the ZBA, it will be coming back to us. Okay, so you want to do a secret? Or go ahead, you got a
Just to
question?
follow up on
What's that?
the gentleman's comment earlier about the right-hand, the dedicated
Oh, yeah.
right-hand turn. I believe what he intended was right-hand turn only, coming out of the plaza. Not allowing the left-hand turn going across Bridge Road, if that would be an opportunity for this intersection.
I don't know that would be, I mean, it's an existing entrance that was approved and built for the plaza. That I don't know that would be feasible at this point. But like Brian said, there is the opportunity to take a right-hand turn with a dedicated right lane, strike right out.
I think if there was only one lane egress, and it was either for making a left to go west or right going east, that would be a problem. But if there are two lanes and someone wants to make a left turn, there's times in the day when you can be in that lane and make the turn also. So you're not restricting that person. When the traffic is so bad, then obviously you would take the other exit.
Right.
As long as the two lanes are, as long as there are three, you've got an ingress and egress. Okay. Okay, anything else?
Actually, because it is Bridge Road is a state highway, and I would like to see comment from them. You know, they just finished the improvements to the intersection, and I'm not hearing anything that addresses traffic count into and out of this plaza. And what, New York State would say about that. I know you went through and you did your, between 4 and 6, and anyone that lives in the area knows that that's not true. Especially if you go by on a Saturday, all day on a Saturday, it's really impossible to get out of this place. And the stacking does still come back quite a ways from 5 Mile Line.
Existing on 5 Mile Line.
On 5 Mile, on Ridge Road.
Sure.
Stacks up, sometimes almost all the way to the school.
Into the plaza?
To the school. Well, sorry, going the other way.
Yeah, I understand there's like, there's the existing.
Going west, it does go to this, and it does stack past the entranceways to this thing. And frankly, I've actually been hit by people while I'm sitting in the lane trying to make a turn, and they come by and sideswipe my car.
Sure.
Just because of the amount of traffic that's in this area. And this type of business, it's a continuous stream that's going in and out of it. And because of that, I think it really needs to have a better review of the traffic on Ridge Road and buy-in from New York State DOT.
I do know that during with the county planning review process, it should get submitted to the DOT. Obviously, we can follow up and see if there's any additional comments. I haven't seen any yet. But the one good thing about the car wash is the traffic generated with the car wash is a lot of pass-by trips and it's a lot of existing traffic.
Sure,
so
I understand.
that is the one benefit, that it's not generating a whole lot of new traffic on the existing roadways or within the plaza itself.
Yes, I understand that, because you've mentioned that before. It's not a destination, and you plan to drive across town to go to this particular car wash. But what you are changing is the flow of traffic. People are going by instead of just going by, I want to make a left-hand turn as I'm going west into this plaza. I go get my car wash, I come out, I want to make a left-hand turn coming out of the plaza. So yes, you may have the same number of people going by, no net change in that, but their actual flow has changed. And that in itself is more the issue than the change in quantity.
I don't think we're so much changing the flow on the existing roadway where the existing entrance is. A lot of that internal traffic within the plaza, so the entrance and exit won't be changed.
So you don't believe that people going west are going to try to turn into this?
It's the same traffic pattern into the plaza with the left-hand turn from Ridge.
Yep. I understand that it is the same traffic pattern, and it's the same number of people, but you're changing the flow. They're not going west and continuing west. They're going west, stopping and trying to make a left-hand turn in. Once they're in, they're coming out, they want to continue going west again. They stop, they wait for an opening, trying to make a left-hand turn on Ridge Road.
This
That
is,
is a traffic pattern that doesn't exist right now. The quantity may not change, but the actual flow of the traffic will change.
Is there a plan for monthly subscriptions like most of the other places do? Because I guarantee that people will go out of their way to go to those other two places that are in town. And so I disagree with the assessment that it doesn't change traffic patterns. I'm not a traffic expert, but
Well, most
my
car
personal
washes,
experience.
most car washes are offering some kind of incentive deal, whether it's a monthly payment plan, a yearly payment plan. I'm sure we're going to be doing the same thing. The journey that we've been on with this project for the last year, from the initial concept plans that were prepared to the ultimate plans before you tonight about turning this building, orienting the building so that the traffic has a long route to come into the plaza before it can even enter the car wash, was done in an effort to provide a variety of exit points for vehicles at the car wash, not just the Ridge Road entrance. I agree with the comment that people are creatures of habit, and they are creatures of habit. If they see they can't get out on Ridge Road taking a left-hand turn, they're going to go to the 5-mile line entrance. That's what this whole project has been about all along, was to give some opportunity for different access points and exit points for the patrons to this car wash. We are this isn't something new for the plaza. We're replacing a 14,000 square foot building that was approved in this location as part of the original plaza. That too had traffic. And not the same opportunity for entrance and exit points for that facility. So this is an alternative plan, if you will, to that originally approved 14,000 square foot building.
Personally, I appreciate all the changes that you've made, but I still feel like you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole this way. In my opinion.
Exactly. Well, just
You
as
can
the
change
project,
the direction of that square peg as many ways as you want, but you're still not getting it into that hole.
Yeah, that's your opinion, and we feel like we have a larger site and more access points than a car wash that was approved further down Ridge Road about a year and a half ago.
as this project has developed over the years, the use of the plaza has changed. We do now have a child's dance studio right in the middle of it, right next to this car wash. That in itself has a significant amount of pedestrian traffic being in and out of the building. And I've said all along with this particular project that I think that the application itself creates a risk to the pedestrian traffic. And I haven't seen anything that's been brought forward to address that. Yes, you turn things around, made it more difficult actually to get in and out of the car wash itself, but there isn't anything that's addressing really pedestrian safety, child safety in the area. For that reason, I think there is some significant concerns with this project. The fact that it's not an accepted use in the area, and I think this is a really good demonstration of that.
Mike said we do have a traffic study as part of the engineer's report. I'm not sure why people have not seen that. There was a number of copies that were submitted to the town. I think if you talk to Jeff, he probably has a copy he could share with you. But that traffic study addressed all of the points that we were asked to address back in the PRC meeting as far as the access points in and out of this plaza. Technically, we did study the traffic on Ridge Road because we studied the turns coming in and out of this plaza from Ridge Road, and somehow we're squeezing 31 cars making a left-hand turn during the peak hour into this plaza. They're not sitting there stacked up, queued up, not being able to get into this plaza. We have another 18 vehicles during the peak hour that are able to make a left-hand turn out of this plaza or are choosing to make a left-hand turn. There's quite a few more cars that are taking the 5-mile line access during the peak hour. So I think you need to understand and review the traffic information for this project as we prepared it.
Okay, let's bring this thing to a head here. We look to move forward with a preliminary. There's obviously issues with the traffic, and to do a seeker on it, would you be amenable to do that or not?
No.
No? Okay, so then
President, because of the significance of the traffic issue
I got you.
for this particular site, it has not been addressed.
I hear you.
I mean, I listen to other people on the board, if you have an opinion on that about the traffic, if it's been adequately addressed. And I do hear comments that it has been, the various reports submitted to the town. Those documents are not something that have been made available for our review or comment provided to us by staff. So at this point, we can't make any kind of decision regarding the significance of what's in the documents.
All right.
I was telling Tony that if the submittal that you have tendered to the town was tendered to the planning board members, then they could review that before they determine if they need an additional study.
Yeah, but we've been in front of this town, and not this board.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been working on this car wash project for going on 3 years now. We would like very much to move forward. I understand the traffic study didn't make it to the board members, and I wish it had. Can I suggest that you condition your preliminary approval, because we still have to come back on review from the state highway authority?
I mean, you can't really do that because we cannot give you a preliminary approval without doing the seeker first. And seeker needs to be done prior to the preliminary, obviously. So it would be a tough thing to do. I don't think, the way I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like anybody wants to go that direction with it.
So what you're saying basically is table it for tonight. We can distribute additional copies of this traffic study if it would please the board. I think staff has reviewed the study and maybe some input from staff also to help guide the board, and we come back at the next meeting.
Yes, I would suggest something like that, Brad, because as you recall, meetings, and you're right, we've had several meetings up at the town and so on, and they all entailed traffic. You know, everything was traffic.
Sure.
So maybe if that's clarified by going through the report, that may change it a little bit, if you see what's going on. That's all I can suggest at this point. So let's do that. Let's get a copy to everyone. If we have them at the town, I don't know. But we'll get a copy of it, review it, come back in 2 weeks to the next meeting. We'll set you up on, what's that, the 17th, I believe? So the 17th, December 17th. So you want a request to be tabled to that?
Sure.
Okay. So need a motion to table it. So you want to make a motion to table?
Motion to table this matter to the 17th, December 17th.
Need a second? I'll second it. Go ahead.
All in favor?
All right, we'll table to that. All right. Okay, the last application we have now is the CEA Fresh Farms. Again, is the last meeting. I'll ask everyone, please appreciate your, bear with us. This is not a fun game for anyone up here. We do what we have to do. You know what the outcome's going to be on it at this point. But if someone is speaking, again, I'll ask, just please be courteous. Don't interrupt the person, no outbursts. We don't want to get into that kind of stuff. Okay, so if you've already signed, is anybody that has not signed that wishes to speak that came in late? If not, I'm assuming we have everyone's name here, and we'll proceed. Go ahead.
CEA Fresh Food Farms, applicant CEA Fresh Farms is requesting preliminary final public hearing to construct a greenhouse farm operation to be located on 140.8 acres on State Road. Proposed facility is a permitted use in the LL Large Lot Zoning District pursuant to the Town Code of Webster.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jerry Goldman. I'm the attorney and agent for CEA Fresh Farms LLC, and we're here tonight for site plan approval to establish an agricultural greenhouse farm on 140 acres located on the south side of State Road between Salt Road and County Line Road. At full build-out, there will be 7 greenhouses of 5 to 7 acres each. To present the application this evening, I will be doing a little bit of an introduction, and the primary presentation will be done by Peter Vars, who is the president of BME Associates, project engineer. We're surrounded by microphones. We also have representatives of CEA available if necessary. We've had 3 neighborhood meetings already to introduce the concept of greenhouse farms, which is the future of agriculture. We're also here, actually at Webster Schrader, for a concept review 2 weeks ago in front of the planning board. We did sketch plan review at that time. We received valuable input from the public and from the board, and are here tonight for formal site plan review. The background of this is pretty simple from a legal point of view. The property is located in the large lot residential district in which agricultural uses are a permitted use, a specific enumerated permitted use. Agricultural uses are defined in the town code as the use of land and buildings in the raising or production of agricultural products, and later on in that paragraph, greenhouse products. So we are a permitted use in the large lot residential district. The use is considered a farm use by the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, and there's been a letter submitted to that effect as part of our application. As an agricultural farm use, the action is a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which is SEQR, as an agricultural farm management practice, including construction, maintenance, and repair of farm buildings and structures. I'm sure we'll be hearing some more discussion from an attorney for some of the neighbors relative to that. We'll be prepared to address those comments as they come up, but this is the approval framework under which we are operating. As was pointed out, we're here on a site plan review for which are specific requirements under the town code. We have addressed those specific standards, I think there are 22 or 23 of them, as part of our full application package and the full engineer's report that has come in accordance with town procedures. We've also received comments from the Monroe County Planning Department, Monroe County Department of Transportation, and Town's Project Review Committee, PRC. You heard a little bit about PRC in the last application. We did get those comments, requested them and got them ahead of time, and we have made a full and comprehensive written response to those comments, which has been sent back to the town. I believe they're in the hands of the Town Commissioner of Public Works and may have been circulated to the board members as well. Throughout our meetings, we've identified 5 primary areas which will be the focus of the engineering presentation. First is lighting, and lighting is a preeminent issue that people have. We have reviewed the town's lighting code. The town did adopt the lighting code in 2018, and we have provided a written summary which provides a full analysis of each element of that code in a letter which I also believe has been submitted to the board. It certainly has been submitted to the town. I believe the board members have it. If you don't, I have additional copies. Peter's presentation will include the discussion of the differences with a prior application for a farm which was before this board a couple of years ago. But as a bit of a spoiler alert, one of the things which is substantially different is the fact that our units are going to have complete shade structures within the greenhouses to capture light and to minimize any light disturbance which may go out of the buildings themselves. The second element which has caught people's attention is the issue of traffic. For a suggestion of the planning board, we did make one major change to the site plan. What was our secondary driveway, which came out opposite a property that did not have a house, now is our primary entrance. The driveway which was initially proposed, which was opposite a house and opposite a driveway for a house, is now going to be a secondary access, but even further is going to be nothing more than an emergency access. It's our intention to gate that access so it will not be utilized. So traffic coming in and out of the site will be coming at a point where there is no house directly opposite where we are going. Peter will go into that a little bit further, as well as the fact that County DOT, who has jurisdiction of State Road as well as Salt Road and County Line Road, has reviewed this matter and provided their comments as well, indicating that there's no real capacity issue on these roads. The third issue which was raised dealt with landscaping and buffering, and we have taken a suggestion from the planning board relative to this. We've enhanced proposed landscaping on the site. Peter will talk about the fact that we have a substantial berm along the frontage of State Road. We are wrapping that berm around the front of the site, but in addition, we are also going to be providing additional trees in locations that Peter will be talking about. Fourth issue that's come up is an issue relative to drainage. We've confirmed that our drainage is in full conformance with state and local regulations. And finally, an issue with regard to some contamination, either on adjacent properties or in a remote section of our site, is something that we are familiar with and will be addressed as part of the engineering presentation this evening. With that, I will turn this over to Peter Fars, the project civil engineer, to give the engineering presentation. We'll then take questions from the board, as typically you do. And then we will sit down and take notes as the public makes their comments, and we'll be prepared to come back at the end of the public comment to address the comments that we receive. With that, I turn it over to Peter.
If you can put up slide 1, please. That's not it, but we can get started. So, good evening. My name is Peter Vars from VME Associates. That's it, thank you. And we are here this evening to present to you the site plan for the CER Fresh Farms project, which is a proposed 7-farm greenhouse on 140 acres. As shown on the slide on the screen behind you, The property is located on the south side of State Road, about 3,000 feet east of Salt Road, and County Line Road is here. The property occupies about 1,800 feet of frontage along State Road. The current use is predominantly an agricultural area, and then in the southeast corner we have a wooded area, and 4 Mile Creek drains southwest through northeast through the southeast corner of the property. The topography on the property is the high point is along the west property line and slopes to the northeast corner of the property, with the low point being right there at the existing culvert of State Road. The site plans, if you can go to slide 2 now, please, thank you. The site plans have been prepared pursuant to section 228-6 of the town code and the design standards of the town of Webster. The development will consist of 7 farms of greenhouses with a full build-out plan for the year 2025. Each farm will be about just under 7 acres in size, so the total acreage of the farm build-out will be about 48.3 acres. Each farm will include an area for the processing, packaging, and shipping of the leafy greens product that is produced within the greenhouses. The total area of those facilities and structures is just under 7 acres at 6.9 acres. In addition to that, there are about 9 acres of impervious area for the parking loading area and the driveways, including the stone driveway area that goes around the perimeter of the greenhouses. So this results in a total development area on the property of about 64.2 acres. So that leaves about 76.2 acres of the total 140-acre site, or 54.3% of the property, as areas for buffering, green space, the retained natural habitat area and wooded area in the southeast corner, and the area for the stormwater ponds throughout the property. And it also provides the area for the landscaping around the perimeter of the property. This site plan has been prepared to comply with the list of standards of the zoning district. There are no variances required or being requested for this project. As it relates to the front setback, the district requires a minimum front setback of 75 feet. The west greenhouse is located 885 feet off of State Road. The east greenhouse is 185 feet off State Road. The district requires a minimum side setback of 15 feet. The west greenhouse is situated 165 feet off the west property line, and the east greenhouse is proposed at 400 feet off the east property line. The district requires a 60-foot rear setback. The closest structure to the rear setback, or the rear property line, is this farm, and that has a 300-foot setback. So obviously the structures are in full compliance with the setback requirements. The other lot standard is the building height. The tallest point in the greenhouse structure is approximately 26 feet in height, which is below the allowed maximum of 30 feet within the district. As we've talked about the large front setback that's been provided, this has been a key area of focus in the design as it relates to buffering and landscaping of the greenhouses from the surroundings. This area will be consist of a landscape berm. The berm itself will be up to 25 feet in height, and it then will be planted with 3 rows of trees and shrubs, thus creating an effective screen and buffer from State Road and points north into the property. As Jerry mentioned, in addition, those berms do wrap around the corners to provide screening as it comes in from the angles. And then in response to comments that we received at the concept plan hearing 2 weeks ago, we've extended the landscaping up these property lines to enhance the existing vegetation that is along those property lines. That perimeter vegetation that's there today will remain, but we're going to infill it with proposed plantings. All in all, this plan proposes 355 new trees and then 105 new shrubs. We submitted to you a couple of exhibits to illustrate this. If we could put up slide number 3, please. Slide number 3 is a cross-section. It's what we call our north-south cross-section. This is State Road. This is the house on the north side of State Road. This is the proposed berm off of the property, utilizing the full 180 feet of setback to create that berm. And then there is the first greenhouse. That's the eastern row of greenhouses. As you can see with the height, with the 3 rows of plantings, these are the sightline exhibits. A car on State Road will not have a view of the greenhouses because of the presence of the berms and the plantings, and the residences on the north side of State Road will not have a view of the greenhouses because of this. That blue line represents their sightline. Again, the proximity of the berm and the plantings will create that screen. If you could show slides 4 and then 5, please. These are photo simulations that were created. This is the culvert on State Road, and this is the corner at the southwest corner. This is the view that you will have on State Road into the site. This is the created berm. These are the plantings. The berm will be constructed with phase 1. It will be part of the initial construction, along with the plantings of the 300+ trees. These trees represent a growth pattern of about 5 to 8 years. We've talked about a build out here of 5 years. And these farms, the closest farms are actually going to be, we're going to start construction at the south and work north. So we will be starting construction at the back end of the site and bringing the greenhouses forward, thus giving ample time for these trees to mature and create the effective buffer we've talked about. Could you please put up slide 6, please? This section was provided out of a request from the concept plan meeting 2 weeks ago. It's an east-west section. That's the site up there. So basically, this is the section. This is the west property line. We talked about how elevation is a big part of our screening plan. This is the high point at the site. As you can see, the elevation difference here. There's about 18 feet of difference between this property line and the floor, finished floor of the greenhouse. And the greenhouse is being at 26 feet in height. So basically only about 8 feet of greenhouse is going to be above the grade here. And then there's also vegetation there. So that is going to be effectively screened from that west property line, the topography and the plantings. Coming across through the site over to the east property line, as you can see, there will be a berm located there, and then there's plantings that will be provided there, again, to screen these greenhouses from the east property line. So the whole buffering plan along the west and east property lines is to utilize the existing vegetation that is there and then infill it with proposed plantings. You can go back to slide 2 now, please. Thank you. So getting to the site plan design, as we've mentioned, one of the things that came out of the concept plan review, we have relocated the primary site access to the west. As you can see on this plan, it now lines up across the vacant parcel to the north side on State Road, such that access into and out of the site will not have any conflicts with any residential properties on the north side of State Road. What was the original primary access will be a stone driveway. It is an approved fire access design. And as Jerry Golden mentioned in the opening, that will be used solely for emergency access. It will be gated and it will be outfitted with a lockbox such that only the emergency responders would have access. And that is being reviewed with the fire marshal at this time. The site access will come in. And the driveway will provide access for the employees and for the shipping and the receiving of the products. The layout, as you can see, has been prepared so that all of the parking and the loading and shipping areas are all into the internal parts of the site. There is no activity proposed around the perimeter. By locating these areas into the interior site, we have insulated them from the surrounding properties. Thus, these activities will be fully buffered from the surrounding areas, north, south, east, and west. Upon full build-out of the project, there will be parking for approximately 300 vehicles on the site, and each farm will have its own individual loading dock shipping areas. We did complete a traffic assessment as part of this project. It was a requirement of the Monroe County Department of Transportation. It is a standard requirement of theirs as part of obtaining an access permit, a highway access permit. That assessment has been prepared. It was provided to the Monroe County Department of Transportation, and it was also provided within our engineer's report that was submitted with our application materials. As Jerry mentioned in the opening, the Monroe County Department of Transportation is the jurisdictional authority, as State Road, Salt Road, and County Line Road are all Monroe County highways. The traffic assessment did look at the full build-out of the project of the 7 farms, including full employment and the truck traffics. As we represented 2 weeks ago, the estimated truck trips out of here are about 5 trips per day per farm. So at full build-out, we're looking at 35 to 40 truck trips a day. The Monroe County Department of Transportation, given the offset peak hours of transportation of trips into and out of this site, based upon the fact that the employees will work, a primary shift is 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., the secondary shift is 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then there is the office staff that works 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Point being is thus the peak hour of traffic is 6 a.m. in the morning, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Those are offset peaks from the peak hours of traffic on the surrounding highway network. So given the fact that those peaks are offset, but also more importantly is the low volume of traffic on State Road and on Salt Road, the county DOT found that the capacity does exist in their highway network for the additional traffic that would be generated from this project, and that no further analysis or study would be required, and no improvements would be required either at the entrance or at any existing intersections. And that correspondence from the county DOT was provided to the Commissioner of Public Works. As part of the parking and loading area, those areas will have lighting. The lighting proposed for the parking and loading areas will all be building-mounted lighting. There are no pole lights proposed. The building-mounted lightings will be LED fixtures. They will have full shields on all sides of the fixture. They will be mounted on the buildings at a height of 20 feet. All of the lights, therefore, are here. They're into the interior of the site. There is no exterior lighting proposed around the outside perimeter of the buildings. So the lighting of the parking lots and loading areas within the interior of the site, not only being LED dark sky compliant, but they are also all fully buffered from the surrounding properties. As it relates to the lighting of the greenhouses themselves, the interior lighting, the lighting within the greenhouses will be LED fixtures also. One of the key components to contain the light within the structures, as Jerry mentioned, will be a curtain and shade system. Rebecca here is handing out the samples. The smaller one, the white one, is the shade that will go on the ceilings, and then the green one is the curtains that will go on the sides of the greenhouse. Actually, if you hold them up and you look through them, you will see that they do not transmit light through them. They are an opaque curtain and shade system. And these will be employed on each farm. What is important to understand also is there has been discussion raised about the Integro site in the town of Ontario. There are 2 primary differences with the lighting program planned within the CEA Fresh Farms project, and that being employed at Integro. And the main difference is it's based on the product and the systems being used. Integro being a vine crop product, and here being a leafy green product. Integro's lighting uses high-pressure sodium lights, and they are mounted much higher in the greenhouses. The vines themselves within the Integro greenhouses grow over 15 feet in height. So those lights are up at the peaks of the greenhouse. Plus, the high-pressure sodium light does create a glow. As we mentioned here at the CEA Fresh Farms site, they will use LED lightings. LED lighting does not create a glow. And more importantly, because of the leafy green product, which does not obviously grow very high vertically, the lights within the CEA greenhouses will be less than 20 feet in height off the floor of the structure. And keep in mind, at that 20 feet in height, with what we've told you about the berming and the plantings around the perimeter of the site and along the frontage, that puts those light sources below that buffer. So we will get perimeter screening also. But the most important feature is the samples you have in front of you, which is the samples of the shades and the curtains that will be used. Those will be what will contain the light within the property. As part of our application of the final site plans that you have, we did include the lighting plans. It identified the fixtures to be used, the outdoor fixtures. But more importantly, it did include the lighting contour plan. That lighting contour plan is provided to you to illustrate clearly that the proposed lighting on this site does comply with Chapter 153 of the code, which was your local law number 2 of 2018, concerning lighting, and the fact that these contours do not extend beyond the property line. In other words, there is no light emissions going beyond the property lines north, south, east, or west of this property. Moving on, the project will include a comprehensive stormwater management plan. This plan has been prepared per the Town of Webster's design standards and, most importantly, the New York State DEC's Stormwater Design Manual. Runoff from the greenhouse roofs will be collected and piped and held into one of 3 proposed irrigation ponds. These ponds are an important component of the operations of the CEA Fresh Farms, as they provide the source of the hydroponic growing operation. The water in these ponds, or I should say the ponds themselves, will have an impermeable liner, and that's important for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it's so it can contain and retain the water that it collects from the roofs. This water is then pumped into this facility, where it is purified, filtrated, and then introduced into the growing system here. But also importantly with the lining is it prevents any interaction of the water within the ponds interacting with the subsoils on the property. As it relates to the remaining runoff from the property, from the pavement areas and the other site areas, that will be collected in a proposed storm sewer system and piped to this area here at the east property line. That is the proposed stormwater management system. A stormwater management facility, most of you are aware of their typical operation. This facility has been designed per the New York State DEC's design manual. It will detain the site runoff. It will treat it and meet the water quality treatment standards of the DEC requirements, and then it will discharge the runoff to 4 Mile Creek. The stormwater management plan that was submitted with our application does the analysis as required, and it shows that the design of this system, the design of the stormwater management system on this project, which is when 4 Mile Creek leaves the property here at the State Road culvert, that the discharge at that culvert under the post-development condition will not exceed the current rates of runoff that are going through that culvert today. And all of that information has been provided to the town and has been reviewed by the PRC. As part of the drainage plan and the construction work, this project does propose the relocation of about 1,000 lineal feet of 4 Mile Creek to facilitate actually the construction of the last farm on the project. This work would be required to be permitted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the New York State DEC. We have had both entities on the property. We have walked the property with representatives from the Corps and the DEC. As part of that process also, both entities also confirmed the limits of their jurisdictional wetlands. There is a DEC wetland in the southeast corner, And there is a DEC wetland off-site to the southwest where their adjacent area comes into the property just at that southwest corner. There are also some small pockets of federal wetlands within the property also. Again, and the limits of all of them have been confirmed with the Corps of Engineers and the DEC. As part of the development of these later farms, we do propose encroaching into a couple of the federal wetland areas. That work would be permitted through the Corps of Engineers, and as part of that permit process, there would be a mitigation plan prepared where there would be mitigation wetlands created on the site that we're currently considering would likely be in this area here, adjacent to 4 Mile Creek. It is important to understand, as we said, there is no planned disturbance of the DEC wetlands, and that we can construct the first few farms without disturbance to any wetlands. All correspondence with the DEC and the Corps of Engineers as it relates to the permit applications and review and all will be copied to the Commissioner of Public Works, so it is on file with the town of Webster. As Jerry mentioned, the applicant has been made aware by the property owner of possible contamination on the property. The applicant has retained an environmental consultant who has begun the study of the property. There were a couple areas of concern noted or identified, and part of mostly through past records of the property owner. One area is here, which is on the Cooperage property in this area, and then the other area is at the south end of the property where there are some debris piles that have been there for quite a while. The field work for this study has been completed, soil samples have been taken, test pits have been excavated. All of this has been done per the procedures established by the New York State DEC. These areas will be avoided with the construction of the first 5 farms while we go through and complete the study process and develop the remediation plan. It is important to understand there is no interaction between the grow process in the farms and the potential contaminated areas. The grow operation is removed from the subsoil and the groundwater condition. There is no interaction between those two processes. Any remediation plan that is going to be prepared by the environmental consultant will be submitted to the New York State DEC for their approval, and it will be carried out under the supervision of the New York State DEC, and that is the process that is established within New York State. And all correspondence concerning that between the applicant or consultant and the New York State DEC will be copied to the Commissioner of Public Works also, so that that information is on file. The project itself will be served by public water. There's an existing water main along State Road. A water line will be extended into the property. It will have a master meter and backflow at the right-of-way line to protect the public water supply from the private water service. That service will be extended into the property. It will provide both fire protection through hydrants and also provide domestic supply to the greenhouses. And all of that is being done under the review and supervision of the Monroe County Water Authority. With regards to wastewater disposal, sanitary sewer, the property will have its own lift station or pump station, and then a force main will be constructed along State Road to the west, connecting to the municipal sewer at Barrow Hill. There has been actually some initial discussions with the Commissioner of Public Works about possibly dedicating that pump station so that there may be the possibility of creating a municipal sewer system in this area to possibly serve the existing residents in the area. The calculations for the water supply, the sanitary sewer, along with the traffic assessment, the erosion control plans, the stormwater management plan, and the soils on the site were all contained within the engineer's report that was submitted with the application. As part of our application, we know that report, along with the site plans, have been reviewed by the PRC As Jerry mentioned, we did receive those comments last Wednesday on the 27th of November, and we did provide written responses to those this morning back to the Commissioner of Public Works, and I believe they have been copied to the board. The important thing about the PRC comments is that in our responses to them, we do not find anything in there that cannot be addressed. We feel very confident that we'd be able to address those to the satisfaction of the PRC, such that any site plan approval that could be considered, that the PRC comments could be a condition of that approval. So with that, I think we will wrap up and allow you to ask us any questions.
To the board, do you think you want to take a few minute break here before we keep going? Because there's quite a few people wanting to. Want to keep going? Oh no, we would definitely have to talk. I'm just saying if somebody wanted to stretch, these seats aren't as comfortable as those. Okay, we'll keep going then if that's what you want. So, anybody, questions, concerns? We can do here right now. I think maybe this would be the better way to even do it. I think we've all lived this thing for a while. We can open it to the public. We'll open the public hearing. If there's comments, we'd ask you to come up. And please keep your comments to 3 minutes or so. That's long enough because there are a whole lot of names here. And again, be courteous to whoever is speaking. Just come up, give us your name and address for the record. Limit your speech time, and if someone is referred to a particular topic, like traffic, and it's something along the same lines, we ask please don't have to repeat the same thing, okay? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Evening, everybody. My name is John Tantillo. I'm an attorney for Webster, Citizens for Appropriate Land Use, and Webster, where open space is worth preserving, two citizens groups that oppose the project. You should have my written comments. Rather than go through each of those again, what I'd like to do is respond to the developer's opposition to those comments and perhaps clarify a few issues. First, on the seeker point. We cited Fleck v. Town of Colden to the board to show that this project is a type 1 action under seeker, even though it's purportedly a farm. I understand that the developer's attorney attempted to distinguish that case in a responsive letter to the board. Their argument there is what's generally called a distinction without difference, which is a tactic attorneys use sometimes when faced with a case that really hurts their argument. They search the case for some largely irrelevant distinction and then point and hold that out as somehow invalidating the rest of the argument. The following is incontrovertible from a reading of Fleck v. Colden. The Fourth Department, which is the appellate court in whose jurisdiction we're in, specifically found that physical alteration of greater than 10 acres, even if done as part of a farm development, constitutes a type 1 action under seeker. Full stop. It doesn't matter if it's a deer farm or a lettuce farm. I believe the developer also claimed that the deer farm at issue in Fleck was somehow not an agricultural farm management practice, but they provided no authority or even reasoning for that statement. No provision in New York law treats deer farms differently than other farms. Regarding the issue of this board's prior seeker determination for the Integral project, I understand there may have been some confusion over what exactly the board's determination there was, whether it was a determination that Integral was a type 1 or just a determination that it was subject to seeker. What matters for our purposes tonight is that when the board rejected the town board's type 2 determination for Integral and declared itself lead agency, that board specifically recognized that the Integral project was subject to seeker and therefore not a type 2 action. The same reasoning holds true here, and the law requires that you treat like applications the same. At the very least, the planning board should declare itself lead agency and solicit comment from other interested agencies before issuing any approvals. The developer also argues that the project complies with the zoning code, but neither of their rebuttals hold water. First, they argue that the project doesn't need to be a customary agricultural use as long as it meets the other definition of agricultural in the code. This renders the customary agricultural use requirement completely meaningless. And we've previously provided the board with authority that states that codes should be interpreted to give effect to every word. The developer also argues that the lot coverage limitation in zoning code 22573D only applies to separate residences for farmhands, despite the fact that there's absolutely nothing in the code that indicates that. Though some sections of 22573 apply to residences, some don't. Nothing in subsection D limits its requirements to on-site residences. The developer tries to twist this reasoning and claim that this would somehow allow farms where they otherwise would not be allowed. That's frankly silly. It's clear that the 22573 requirements are additional requirements designed specifically to protect property owners from incongruous development. Under the developer's interpretation, the project would not have any lot coverage limitation.
Excuse me, let me ask you
Sure.
a favor. Could you slow down your speech a little bit?
Apologies.
Because it's reverberating up and I'm getting like just a blur of words.
Is there anything specifically that you didn't, that I should go over again? Anything that you didn't catch that I should go over again, or?
No, you're okay, but
Sure.
you're on a railroad going down fast and fast.
I get that from court reporters too, as Jerry can attest. Under the developer's interpretation of the code, the project would not have any lot coverage limitation in the LL district, which obviously cannot have been the intent for a district specifically created to keep impervious surfaces low. If that 22573 20% maximum doesn't apply, there's nothing that stops them from building as much lot coverage as they want. That can't be the interpretation that carries water. And finally, the site plan review factors themselves. I think it's important to take a step back and look at why we're actually all here tonight. The developer is clearly trying to exploit what they see as a gray area in the town code to site a project on what was probably a less expensive parcel than one more appropriate for the development. Now, a long time ago, when the state town law was drafted and the system of town governance was set up, the legislators recognized that questions involving gray areas were going to come up. That's part of the reason planning boards were put in place. Because we need human eyes and human minds to look at questions that can't realistically be addressed by a rigid formula every time. Now, every one of us here knows that the town decided agricultural uses, that when the town decided agricultural uses could be sited in residential districts, it was not the intent to allow 60 acres of industrial-style buildings right in between single-family residences. Luckily, they gave you guys this list of 23 factors in section 228.6 to decide if a project is appropriate for a specific property. No method of responsible municipal planning can conclude that these buildings belong on this property. Don't let the developer exploit this gray area. It's why you're here. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the planning board, and fellow citizens of Webster. My name is Paul Vixler, and I live at 628 Hills Pond Road. Over the past month,
Hold on just a second. Yeah. Could you let him speak, please?
Over the past month, I've closely followed this project, and I have attended the public hearing and the concept plan review meeting. One issue that needs to be addressed is the basic right of people to buy, sell, and use property for the uses they see fit. This right forms the very basis of our country, our freedom, and our liberty. George Washington once said, "Freedom and property rights are inseparable. You can't have one without the other." Quite frequently, it is easy to discuss the usage of this property in terms of what we want. It is easy for us to mention our wishes and our desires for this property. But we don't own this property. Just because it is easy to imagine leaving this property in its undeveloped state doesn't mean we have the right to force this property to remain that way. When we insist on stopping projects such as these, we remove the rights of landowners to sell their land and the right of new landowners to use land. This, I consider a violation of the basic ideals that makes our country great, runs against what the Founding Fathers wished for when they created this nation. We cannot continue to cast liberty aside and enter a future without economic growth or job opportunities. The decision of whether or not to approve this project boils down to a basic question. Do we allow this use of this property, or do we stall and deny this project for arbitrary and capricious reasons? At the two other meetings I attended regarding this project, I spent time talking to people that support this project and people that oppose this project. One issue that was raised was that this project is in the wrong location and that it should be located in a different section of town. But it seems as if nobody can agree where this perfect section of town is located. When the Intergrowth tomato greenhouse was proposed a couple of years ago, it was in a different location. Yet the same group that opposed the Intergrowth greenhouse is trying to block this project, despite the fact that this project is located in a different section of town. Furthermore, wishing the project be located in a different area does not change the fact that this property is zoned for this type of project. Mere opinions do not change the fact that the New York Agriculture Markets Law, in addition to nearly every other farming expert, considers hydroponic farming agriculture. What appears to be happening is we have what is known as not my backyard syndrome. Each person says, not my backyard, but another location in town will be perfect. But in doing so, we don't just kick projects out of our backyards. Collectively, we kick projects out of our communities. This hinders economic growth for our town, and it hinders our future. Another objection that was raised is that this project is a new venture for this company. But every company begins with a new venture. If this standard requiring prior performance was consistently applied, no new businesses could ever be formed, and it would ban entrepreneurship entirely. Members of the planning board ask that amid this noise of confusion, that you do what is just and do what is right. I ask that you vote yes to this project and vote for property rights.
Wait a minute, hold on. None of the negative stuff, folks. Thank you, that was very well put.
You got money in this, Kashini?
May I ask a question about the procedures? There's a sign-up sheet, and we're under the understanding that the sign-up sheet was in the order of the speakers. Is that accurate?
We could do that, but, I'm sorry. We can do it by name, or we can do it just by raising your hand.
Okay.
What would you prefer?
That's why we signed up. One of the reasons why we signed up is there's going to be some people that are going to defer to the next speaker. Because we don't, I'm sorry? You guys can use the list.
No, go ahead.
But what some of them are going to do is defer to one primary speaker for our group.
That's okay.
And so we don't want to take up too much of your time with introductions and other things. We want to make sure that we do what is right.
Very well.
Thank you. My name is Don Nims.
Oh, just give us your name again, we didn't get it.
Sure. My name is Don Nims, and I live at 1134 Stonegate Drive.
Okay, thanks.
I've been asked to kick off a presentation by residents who have done the research and performed an analysis to assess this development. They are indeed passionate about the town of Webster, where they live, work, and play. They are counting on the town to do the right thing and fully assess this development. Anything less is unacceptable. I'm a licensed professional engineer, past president of the New York State Society of Professional Engineers, and with over 30 years of experience, I'm used to applying land use standards and assessing impacts of developments like this. And in my opinion, this development belongs in an industrial zone because it utilizes an industrial process to grow produce with an intensity that does not meet the customary ag operation or the generally accepted principles of farming. I doubt that those terms include wholesale growing of crops and a bath of water inside a building with unnatural light and without any land being plowed or actively farmed. As you listen to the presentation, please consider 3 points. And the first point is most important. According to the Ag Market Law 305, the Town Planning Board has the flexibility to contravene the New York State Ag Markets input because the public health and safety is threatened by this development. Besides, if I were in your shoes, I would not accept a state agency usurping my right to exercise approval powers for a local matter. Point 2, armed with that flexibility, the Town Planning Board can now meet its obligation to factor in environmental impacts that will affect health, safety, and welfare of the environment as well as its residents. Again, if I were in your shoes, I would not accept a simple type 2 seeker action.
when this development is going to have such a large impact, especially when it exceeds the thresholds for a seeker type 1 action that we'll be presenting later on. Point 3, the town planning board has the right and obligation to factor in the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as it contemplates this development. This development is not consistent with several goals and objectives of that plan. The following presentation describes impacts of this development. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning Board members. My name is Tim Young. I reside at 1019 Pathway Lane. I'm here to present on behalf of the Webster citizens for appropriate land use. We believe that we can demonstrate that this project is not an appropriate use of the land on the proposed location on State Road. I have a presentation up here if you want to take a peek. First, I want to put this project in perspective. The applicant proposes 2.3 million square feet of buildings. That site size itself is equivalent to 1.5 Webster Town Center plazas. The buildings alone are equivalent to 66 football fields. Being football season, we can all relate to that. And being in Rochester, we all can relate to Wegmans. And this is the equivalent, the buildings on the site alone are equivalent to 23 Wegmans stores. Regarding zoning, this project is not allowable in large lot residential. And I quote from the town code, the intent of large lot zoning district is to encourage large lot residential development in areas where conditions of the environment, availability of utilities, and surrounding land use patterns dictate that residential densities and the amount of land covered by impervious surface remain low. There happens to be an error in here, which I thank the applicant for tonight. There are actually 72.7 acres of impervious surface that includes the ponds, which they mentioned tonight are also impervious. So that's 52% of the property will be covered in impervious surface. That obviously contravenes large lot residential. The town may have not been aware of this previously, but the maximum lot coverage for agricultural use in large lot residential is 20%. The applicant plans to cover 38% of the property with buildings. This was mentioned previously, but some additional information. Customary agriculture is what the term is that's in the town code. And customary agriculture is allowed. By the applicant's own admission, this will be the first project of its kind in the U.S. We're bringing technology that's very little used in the United States today. We're going to create a campus. That does not sound like customary agriculture to me. These are examples of other controlled environmental agriculture operations in the state of New York. These are located in industrial zones or non-residential zones. Green Empire is in Oneida, that's the one in the picture. We all know about Intergrow down the street. And there's the new Clearwater Organic Farms at the Eastman Business Park in Greece, all in industrial zones. These are a couple examples of greenhouse farms in other states, in Ohio and in Illinois. These are also in industrial zoned areas. Mr. Chairman, you've mentioned a number of times that you need to follow the law. Here are some parts of the law that this project contravenes. State Environmental Quality Review Act was established by Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law. Its stated purpose is to declare a policy which will encourage productive and enjoyable harmony between man and his environment, to promote efforts which will prevent or eliminate damage to the environment, and enhance human and community resources, to enrich the understanding of ecological systems, natural, human, and community resources important to the people of the state. This is the first paragraph of seeker. Following that is what our state legislators found and declared. The maintenance of a quality environment for the people of this state is at all times healthful and pleasing to the senses and intellect of man now and in the future is a matter of statewide concern. Again, this is from our state legislators who set up seeker. This is from Article 8 of the Department of Environmental Conservation Law. There is a need to understand the relationship between the maintenance of high-quality ecological systems and the general welfare of the people of the state, including their enjoyment of the natural resources of the state. To enhancement of human and community resources depends on a quality physical environment. And finally, it is the intent of the legislature that the protection and enhancement of the environment, human and community resources shall be given appropriate weight with social and economic considerations in public policy. Furthermore, it is the intent of the legislature that all agencies conduct their affairs with an awareness that they are stewards of the air, water, land, and living resources, and that they have an obligation to protect the environment and for the use and enjoyment of this and all future generations. The state legislature also says that all agencies which regulate activities of individuals, corporations, and public agencies which are found to affect the quality of the environment shall regulate such activities so that due consideration is given to preventing environmental damage. Agriculture and Markets Law. This law states it is the declared policy of the state to conserve and protect agricultural lands, not agricultural operations, but agricultural lands as valued natural and ecological resources, which provide needed open spaces for clean air sheds, as well as for aesthetic purposes. This project will destroy 111 acres of habitat, infill 3 acres of wetlands, remove 63 acres of permeable ground surface, modified now to 72.7 acres, and capture over 21 million gallons of rainwater, which would otherwise flow into the wetlands and 4 Mile Creek. The town's responsibility in this matter is that the town has the right and obligation to factor in environmental impacts that will affect the health, safety, and welfare of the environment, as well as its residents. This is a picture taken by a resident of the Integral factory at night, 2.5 miles away. And I understand there's statements about shades and examples of shades going around here, but I also understand that there are shades at Integral. I don't know if they have them deployed all the time or not, but who are we to say once these buildings are in place, whether they deployed the shades or not? We don't know, and then what do we do? Further, town responsibility regarding the comprehensive master plan. Don alluded to these, I'll get into the details. Goal F says enhance tree and soil preservation. This project will clear cut 10 acres of forest and level grade and remove over 111 acres of topsoil, some of which is of state value. Goal H, protect agriculture and farmland. This project will replace agriculturally viable farmland with permanent structures and impermeable surfaces. Goal K, again, this is in our comprehensive master plan. Protect wildlife habitats and ecosystems. This project destroys over 111 acres of habitat, combination of fields, woodland, and wetlands. Additionally, per the Army Corps of Engineers, given the amount of wetland to be filled, anything more than 1 acre, The standard permit would be required, which would entail a full environmental assessment or environmental impact study. That includes a full alternatives analysis to demonstrate that the proposal is the least damaging, practicable alternative and must include a review of public review factors. It also includes a public comment period where coordination letters would be sent to all potential concerned parties. And the proposal will also likely need to be listed in the Federal Register. There is a list of concerned parties, I'm not going to read them all off, that would have to be involved in that process. Now to SECRA. I've heard a lot about that tonight. SECRA classification, as you know, is the town's prerogative. The town should classify the project as they see fit and within the guidelines of SECRA. This is, by the way, is from Bob Summers, Department of Agriculture and Markets. They can also talk to the DEC about classification. SECRA is part of that agent's responsibility, and once they have all the facts, they can seek an opinion from DEC. We have other information from Scott Shealy at the DEC. He told us these types of proposals may require local approvals, and where such approvals are required, it would be appropriate for the responsible municipality to classify the action pursuant to SECRA at the time it receives a complete project proposal. And I'll highlight a few things that are incomplete about the current proposal down the road. This project must be classified type 1 because it actually violates the section of the law that the applicant continues to cite to support their type 2 argument. That is 617.5C4. They leave out the part that says land use changes consistent with generally accepted principles of farming. The project is most certainly a land use change, as 111 acres is to be stripped and 63 acres, 72.7, covered in impervious surfaces. The project is not consistent with generally accepted principles of farming per the applicant's own admission. And I'll repeat again, this will be the first project of its kind in the U.S. We're bringing technology that's very little used in the United States today. We're going to create a campus. The SECRA list of type 1 actions includes a project or action that involves the physical alteration of 10 acres. This project will physically disturb 111 acres per the applicant, clearly making this a type 1 action. Furthermore, an action must have significant adverse impacts on the environment. It does, and I'm going to list them for you. First is a substantial adverse change in existing air quality, ground or surface water quality or quantity, traffic or noise levels, a substantial increase in solid waste production, a substantial increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, leaching, or drainage problems. CEA plans to capture and impound 21.8 million gallons of rainwater for use in the production process. That is a substantial adverse change in ground or surface water quantity, as that water will no longer be running into 4 Mile Creek. Traffic and noise levels will be substantial and an adverse change. If you live in the area, you know that there are some trucks that go up and down Salt Road, but very few going down State Road. And now there will be 40 per day going up and down State Road. That alone will increase noise levels. And there will be a substantial increase in solid waste production, which is not addressed at all that I've seen in the applicant's EAF. Other significant adverse impacts: the removal or destruction of large quantities of vegetation or fauna, or other significant adverse impacts to natural resources. The applicant plans mass grading of 111 acres of topsoil. Of that, 10,000 cubic yards of topsoil, consisting of prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance, will be removed from the site, eliminating 58.6 acres of agricultural land. They plan to fill in 2.9 acres of federal wetlands, and they plan to reroute a tributary of 4 Mile Creek. More significant adverse impacts. The impairment of the character or quality of existing community or neighborhood character. This project is certainly of the magnitude that it impairs the aesthetic resources and the neighborhood character, which is currently a mix of large lot residential homes and traditional farming. The light emanating from the greenhouses will absolutely change the existing community and neighborhood character. This is a picture of the plants in the Netherlands where the applicant is purporting to bring or import the greenhouses from, taken at night, and that's what the sky will look like. More significant adverse impacts. A major change in the quantity of energy. Energy is not addressed in the applicant's EAF at all. Based on data from a Cornell study regarding greenhouses and the National Center for Biotechnology Information, power draw in excess of 10 megawatts is to be expected from this project. That projected draw is the equivalent of approximately 8,189 homes. That's half the homes in the entire town of Webster. The project would require substantial infrastructure changes, including but not limited to new transmission and or distribution lines and a new substation. If that's not enough, a substantial change in the use or intensity of use of land, including agricultural. Construction of buildings of payment on 63 acres of active farmland, most of which is prime farmland, 299 employees per day versus the 1 or 2 that currently are working on that farm, 40 truck trips per day versus a few per month. These certainly represent substantial changes in the use and intensity of use of the land. Encouraging or attracting of a large number of people to a place or places for more than a few days compared to the number of people who would come to such a place absent such action. CEA is planning 299 employees arriving daily when they're at full production. Destruction of farmland. The applicant's environmental assessment form claims there are no agricultural lands consisting of highly productive soils present. Seeker instructions direct us to a USDA Web Soil Survey website to make this determination. The USDA defines highly productive soils as prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance. Per the USDA Web Soil Survey, the project property contains 98 acres of prime farmland, 8 acres of prime farmland if drained, and 5 acres of farmland of statewide importance. Thus, there are actually 111 acres of highly productive soils present. And if you would take a look behind you, sorry to have you keep twisting around, but this is the actual screenshot of that Web Soil Survey. And as you can see, everything in green is prime farmland. The, what I call turquoise color, which is in the upper right and the middle left, is prime farmland if drained, and the blue along the right-hand side is farmland of statewide importance. The areas in red are mostly the wooded areas at the south end of the property, and that is not farmland. So when you lay these two side by side and look at the project and what it's going to cover, the majority of the project covers prime farmland and prime farmland of statewide importance. I include the Web Soil Survey key details for reference. I'm not going to go into those here. Regarding the earthwork that's planned for this project has never happened in Webster before. By our estimates, 1.5 billion yards of earth is to be moved. That's the equivalent of 100,000 15 cubic yard truckloads at a projected cost of $6 to $8 million. The depth of excavation at the rear of the property, that's the southwest corner, will dictate an archaeological study be done. Blasting will be necessary as it's deeper than the bedrock. Additionally, 3,000 loads of crushed stone for the parking and perimeter will have to be hauled in, and 105 loads of asphalt for the parking areas. That's a lot of trucks on salt and state roads. Infrastructure concerns need to be considered. The applicant would tap into an existing 8-inch water line. Based on an NCBI study, 2.36 gallons per pound per year of water is needed to grow leafy greens. If we extrapolate that based on the applicant's projections and adjust it to account for the rainwater collection, the applicant would use 8,727 gallons of water per hour from Monroe County Water Authority. That's equivalent water usage of 1,007 homes. The flow velocity in that line would increase by approximately 1 foot per second. Ideal pipeline design maintains flow velocity below 5 feet per second, meaning the applicant alone would use 20% of the capacity of the existing water line. We don't know what the current flow rate is in that line. Failure to adequately address water supply would lead to reduced line pressure, affecting all residents fed by that water line. Electrical concerns. We've actually talked about all of this, but the last bullet point is the one that's pertinent here, and that is a power transmission infrastructure action that is bringing in the transmission line and building the substation that would be required to power this project would in itself require an environmental impact study. Sewer. The applicant states that they're going to put in nearly a mile of sewer line down State Road. We feel that this will require an environmental impact study as well. We know that there's possibility of some horizontal drilling, but we don't believe that that can be done for 1 mile. The impact to local roads must be considered not just in quantity of vehicles, but what type of vehicles are going to be on those roads. The volume of trucks will cause greater wear to the roads and require them to be repaired more frequently. All this is leading to segmentation. Segmentation is not allowed, as you all know, by seeker. Segmentation is defined as the division of environmental review of an action so that various activities or stages are addressed as though they were independent. Can't do that. Stated contrary to the intent of seeker. Seeker also states, the DEC also states that segmentation typically does occur where activities that may be occurring at different times or places are excluded from the scope of the environmental review. By excluding subsequent phases or associated project components from the environmental review, the project may appear more acceptable to the reviewing agency and the public. For this project, specifically energy requirements were not included in the application in the applicant's environmental assessment. It needs to be, otherwise it would be a segmented project. Summary on seeker. All aspects of a project must be considered in making a seeker determination, as a segmented action is not allowed. If any part of a project requires a Type 1 classification, the entire project must be classified Type 1. More than 10 acres, 111, will be physically altered, also making this a Type 1 action. I've listed numerous significant adverse impacts to the environment. The infrastructure requirements for this project are significant. Taken in its totality, this project is absolutely a Type 1 action. I'm almost done. In summary, this project should be rejected for the following reasons. Webster zoning law does not allow the applicant's project on the proposed lot. The project is not consistent with the Webster Comprehensive Master Plan. Destruction of 111 acres of highly productive soils contravenes the stated purpose of SECRA and agriculture and markets laws. There are numerous and significant environmental impacts. There is significant infrastructure work required. This project is clearly a Type 1 action and belongs in an industrial zone. Lastly, I have for the board members opposition letters. At last count, there are 250 of them from residents who oppose this project. And I have copies of this presentation for all of you. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Randy Phillips, and I live at 1808 Plank Road. I wish to speak on a different topic regarding this proposal. The topic that I wish to speak on is the downside risk from a financial aspect of this proposal. I'd like to lay out some facts regarding what has been proposed here. CEA Fresh Farms is proposing approximately, and this is gleaned from the 11/6 informational meeting, a $200 million construction project on 140 acres of zoned large lot residential land in Webster. The construction will include 48 acres of special use greenhouses, 9 acres of paved land, 7 acres of support buildings, for a total of 45 acres, and actually tonight, once again, I think it's a little bit more than that. The project will be constructed over a 5-year period, being phased in over 5 years. And as we understand from the informational meeting, CEA Fresh Farms has applied for taxpayer support in the construction of this project. Per the 11/6/19 informational meeting, funding for this project will be relying upon equity investments from private investors who will be unknown to the town of Webster. CEA Fresh Farms will be utilizing growing technology currently utilized in foreign markets but not currently utilized in the United States. And CEA Fresh Farms has no existing operations of any growing campuses like the one proposed here. Looking at the downside financial risk of this project, wherever it is built. Taxpayer support, while not an unusual component of project finance, serves to transfer a portion of the risk of the project to the taxpayers. That risk is quantified and absolute. The return on that risk in the form of economic benefit is not easily quantified and is not guaranteed. Private investor equity funding, while also not unusual in such a transaction, creates additional risks to the town of Webster and taxpayers. Has the town done proper diligence regarding the funding sources? What happens if the funding does not materialize or materializes partially? What are the sources of bridge financing in the event of funding delays? Equity finance typically carries a higher return to the investor than to senior bank finance, known as a mortgage loan. This translates to higher debt services requirements for CEA Fresh Farms, i.e. CEA must make more money in order to satisfy its investors. There is no guarantee of project completion from the equity investors and likely no completion guarantee from the owners of CEA Fresh Farms. Investor downside is limited to whatever the investment to date is by the private investors. Moving on to the financial downside of this specific location. This project represents a double jeopardy of risk to the town of Webster's and the taxpayers based upon the proposed location. The property improvements CEA Fresh Farms is proposing are highly specialized in nature to include exceptionally large greenhouse buildings, paved parking lots, rainwater collection and filtration systems, industrial-style retention ponds, and purpose-built common buildings. While we have all considered the upside potential of CEA Fresh Farms' unproven business model with untested technology in the United States, I wish to look at the alternative potential of this project. What if this business fails? If CEA Fresh Farms is unable to realize on its business model, is unable to secure the $200 million in funding needed to complete the project, or is unable to complete construction on the project in a proposed location, what are the town of Webster and its taxpayers left with? I would cite slide 2 of the CEA Fresh Farms presentation, as well as this diagram right here. The town of Webster and its taxpayers will be left with an eyesore which looks entirely like an industrial campus and not an agricultural facility or developable land. The property will require an enormous investment to repurpose for suitable use. This includes repurposing or removing of the greenhouses, repurposing or removal of the paved improved areas, equipment, common buildings, etc. Additionally, the investment in utilities to power the project campus will require alteration as well. At this point, CEA Fresh Farms is gone if this project fails. Equity investors have no recourse to these incremental costs. It will most likely be the taxpayers who are called upon to fund the repurposing costs of the property. At the same time, the taxpayer initial investment will have yielded nothing. To substantially mitigate the double jeopardy risk to the town and its taxpayers, this project should be built in an industrial setting. This greatly reduces the potential repurposing costs as it pertains to pavement, utilities, common buildings, and potentially the greenhouses themselves. It is the town government's responsibility to not only drive new business for Webster, but also to protect its taxpayers and itself against undue burden in the process. If CEA Fresh Farms project goes dark in a proposed location, there are no options but to tear it out or convert it to industrial. If we are going to undertake a project with CEA Fresh Farms for the potential upside, let's recognize the downside risk and act properly to mitigate it for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Excuse me, can we get a copy of that, please? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Brower. I live at 4 Hampstead Drive, a little farther down State Road to the west. And I've been asked by the concerned citizens to come in and make a statement about what I believe my opinion is as regard to real estate values in that area. So basically, we've got Salt Road, County Line Road, State Road. It's all predominantly residential. There's school buses that run every morning and every night. And in the middle of this, we're proposing to drop a project like this. It's a factory in the middle of a residential neighborhood. We're going to have an open time of 6 to 2 and 2 to 10. Proposed 300 car parking, 350 employees, 35 trucks going in and out of that per day. It's going to be like bees coming in and out of a hive in the middle of this residential area. It's not going to affect just State Road. These people are entitled to the quiet enjoyment of their homes. It's not going to be that way if something like this goes in. This is, in my opinion, is very consistent with an industrial type operation. I have not seen a farm, I'm from the southern tier, I have not seen a farm there or here with 300 car parking.
or with 75 trucks or 350 employees. I've also considered what future development would look like around this area should this go in. I don't know of any, I know that no developer will say, let's put in a new home tract in that area of any type with an operation like that in the middle of it. As far as their own homes, what will happen to the value of the homes? To say that their values won't be diminished throughout this 5-year period and beyond, it's just not realistic. How much it will be devalued, I think has yet to be seen. I don't do a lot of commercial type real estate, but I've done some. I have 23 acres of industrial land for sale on Basket Road. I believe this development would be much better suited to an area like that.
That's a good sell.
I see if it works. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, we have to go back to what we said originally. We have to limit these to 3 minutes because two of the speakers who did a great job got up and spoke for everyone. That was the intended cause. So we can't keep going with, repetition of the same thing. So keep it to a few minutes and that'll be it. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Hello, my name's Tom O'Connell. I live at 1196 Liberty Lane, Ontario. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today as a survivor of a similar situation when I lived in an environment very much like this. And a large entity came in and everything changed for the worse. I can also speak as a survivor and a witness to what happened to the pain and loss people suffered that were the residents that lived close by. The situation is different, but I lived out in Albion. I bought a beautiful 2-acre house. It was my dream house. It was where I wanted to live. It was where I wanted to bring my kids up. About 3 years later, the whispers came around that they're going to put a large landfill in behind our house. So, of course, we came forward with the same concerns: water quality, traffic, real estate values. And we were turned away. By the time we found out about it, different than this, the fix was already in. The DEC wanted it to go there. The town wanted it to go there. The company, of course, wanted it to go there. But when we went and we asked about the water quality, we heard the same stories about the impervious seal. When we talked about real estate values, we were told, well, where's your data? Well, what kind of data do you really need to say that your real estate value is going to be affected wrongly? And then, things got worse, but they're a little different than that, so I won't bother going there. So as time went on, we fought, we lost. Things became, really unlivable, or not the way I wanted to live. So I had my house for sale for a year. And for a year, I got one offer. And people used to have open houses, and people would pull in, they'd sit there for a minute, look around, they just pull back out and leave. So I lost probably 25% on my property. But I was really one of the lucky ones because my house was farthest away from where the landfill had started building. The other people stayed. It had been generational land, been in their families forever. But finally, well, we knew what happened did happen. The water became contaminated. There were all wells. The drinking water was contaminated. And then people tried to get out, and it was too late. Their houses, no one would buy their house. So their property was basically useless or worthless. So, what's your property worth if no one wants to buy it? So these are the kinds of things that really happen. So my position, my point that I want to make is that this should go where it should go. And wherever that is, local residents shouldn't be harmed. So some people making money, the balance of the scales of justice, some people are making money and some people are losing money. It's costing them money. That can't happen. That shouldn't happen. So if this is approved, wherever it's approved, the people that profit from this should fairly compensate the people negative affected. So I mean, you live when you experience this, you live with that pain and loss every day. So I just could take that seriously. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're going to start using a clock, limiting it to 3 minutes. We can't continue going with long speeches and no repetition, please. We've got to bring this up to a
Let the developer talk as long as he wanted.
If you think 3 minutes isn't long enough to talk, after that, the average person loses track of what you're saying, okay? So 3 minutes, I think anyone can get up and speak what they feel like saying. It will give you the opportunity.
My name is Paul Kuberich, and I live in the middle of that proposed abomination. I first want to apologize for my father, who decided to use the land as a dump site. When I see him again, I'm going to kick his ass. Supervisor Ron Nesbitt called me 3 times trying to get me to sell my property because he said the CEA wanted it or needed it. He said he was authorized to negotiate price with me, and what will it take for me to sell my homestead? I told him, and I told Mr. Fite, it's not for sale. My grandfather, Andrew Kubarich, bought that land in the 40s. I was born and raised there. I'm 3rd generation, and I intend to pass it off to one of my grandchildren for the 5th generation. I don't have anything more technically to add to all this. You know, the talent that you guys have all expressed is overwhelming. It's amazing. But this beautiful piece of open space, you know, for you, CEA, to irreversible mutilate this beautiful piece of property it's unacceptable. You know, in fact, you showed pictures at your presentation of this beautiful green field, which you just intend to transform. I looked out at the field today and I saw a large flock of geese in the cornfield, enjoying the cornfield. You know, I've seen deer, turkey, possum, raccoon, fox, coyotes roam the field. Hawks, crows, and turkey vultures use it as their hunting ground, looking for mice, muskrat, rabbit, woodchuck, whatever else lives there. You know, it's used in the winter for skiing, in the summer for hiking. Horseback riding goes on back there, ATVs, and it's a great place for hunting. Most of all, it's enjoyed not just by the neighborhood, but by other cars and touristers that travel up and down that road, who look out and see the beautiful open field with the woods in the back. It is beautiful. You can see all the way to the back. And because of this proposed berm and the greenhouse, all that will disappear, never to be used or seen again on this beautiful piece of open land. The town of Webster will be irreparably changed. Not for the better, but for the worse. And for what? The dollar? The almighty dollar. The dollar doesn't buy the quality of life that this open space provides to the town of Webster, to its people, and to the animals that call it their home. I urge you, town leaders, to not put your stamp of approval on this obscene land mutilation. Be the leaders you are called to be for your townspeople, and deny this application. Please don't let it happen here.
Hi, my name is Ellen Moody, and I live at 1721 State Road, just 2 doors down from Paul. And back in 2005, my husband and I decided to build our dream home. And we wanted to stay in Webster because we love Webster, but we also wanted a spot that had some open space. My husband didn't want neighbors close by. We found this piece of property on State Road. When we walked the property line, there was deer running out from the cornfield that is the Kubrick's land now, down our path, and that pretty much sealed the deal for us. So as I said, we built our dream home there to live out our retirement years. And on top of that, I just want to say that we were let down once when we first bought it. We were told that Webster was going to designate it as green space. That was another reason we chose to buy that property. That got pulled out from under us, I believe because of the toxic property that everybody has talked about. So anyway, we felt with that, and then the fact that there was this dump site, whatever, we still thought, okay, no one's gonna touch this land, no one's gonna develop houses on it, thought we were in the clear. So anyway, we are one of the people that we are immediately to the west of where this is going to be, and when we sit out in our backyard on our back deck that faces beautiful woods now, all we're going to see to the east of us is an industrial park. And for paying almost $8,000 a year in Webster taxes, I don't think that's right. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Okay,
Good evening.
again, I'm going to ask.
Don't worry, I'll be short, Tony.
I know you will be, I'm okay with that.
Okay,
I always
so
say, we know there's deer, we know there's rabbits
Okay,
and squirrels.
okay.
We don't need to hear any more of that. Let's stick to the facts.
Okay, I got the point. I have a long presentation here. After looking at these technical presentations and legal presentations, I'm begging the board to do their due diligence and turn this thing down. It does not belong here. We should have learned our lesson with Integro, number one, and number two is if there was any zoning board or any zoning laws that had to be changed because it was very, very facts, very obvious to everybody that Webster did not want this kind of plant. And here we go again. So I beg you folks to do your due diligence, and to the potential owners here, I ask them to go someplace where you're wanted. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because you have a nice operation here. But you can see the impact you're going to have on our village, on our town. In the middle of, like we said, large lot zoning. Thank you. John Haig, I live at 1106 Twin Leaf Terrace in Candlewood Park. Thank you.
No, but repeat it again, she didn't get it, I'm sorry.
Don Haig, H-A-A-G. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak on this right now? Okay, what I'm going to do, oh, all right, go ahead.
I didn't say anything while you guys talked. So it's been like 5 years since I've been in this auditorium, but first of all, thank you to everybody that's here providing sound and lighting and video support for this meeting. I know it's late, I'll be brief. There have been many false accusations and untrue statements made on social media and other places about this project. I'm disappointed that some people made statements that the supervisor Nesbitt took a bribe or received some money to broker this project or accuse people of shady lobbying or corruption. In the reality, the supervisor has no input to this project whatsoever. This project can only be approved or denied by this board right here. Also regarding tax breaks, Supervisor Nesbitt is well known in a long-term policy of no town tax breaks to businesses. However, the school district and the county can do whatever they want, and he's got no control over that, so there'll be no town tax breaks for this project. Webster has been a farming community for 100 years. The property has been agricultural district and been farmed for as long as anyone that I've talked to can remember. The property is identified as being in an agricultural district per the town's current comprehensive plan. And I'm not a lawyer, but I found that New York State Agricultural and Markets Law, AML 305-A, prohibits local governments from enacting and administering comprehensive plans, laws, ordinances, rules, or regulations that unreasonably restrict or regulate farm operations within an agricultural district. Hydroponics are not new. They're currently being taught at Webster Schroeder High School. They have a hydroponics lab and they teach it to students there. Speaking of environmental impacts, the prime farmland that I keep hearing is reportedly contaminated by waste, such as silver from Kodak film. It's my understanding that the only thing that can be grown there is corn feed for animals such as cows. Contaminated ground growing contaminated corn being fed to cows that produce meat for people to consume. Does that sound good? Is this contaminated land also contaminating the groundwater in people's local wells or the runoff to 4 Mile Creek? Is anyone concerned about that? I think it's very important that the land will be cleaned up and the cost of the cleanup will be paid for by the new owners of the land. I would think that it would be a big plus, not only for neighbors, but for the town as a whole, and will likely improve property values. Anyways, really? I would expect that from...
Okay, hold on, folks, please.
Anyway, there's a lot to consider. Good luck with your decision.
Kenneth Court, 755 Mile Line Road. I'm on Facebook if you want to find
Okay, are there any more comments to be made? If not, you want to speak? Why not? Give me something new, please.
Carmen Scarlata, 1786 State Road. Okay. Right here. Okay. When we built that house, we lived on Ridgeway Avenue for 7 months. And in front of us, if anybody knows Ridgeway Avenue and Kodak, we had Kodak in front of us, Kodak behind us, Kodak down the street. And all we would hear is cars, horns, 18-wheelers going by in the winter, spinning their tires, okay? Behind us, on Ridgeway Avenue, was the docks. As far away as the docks were, in the still of the night, you can still hear those dock workers going, you can hear those 18-wheelers going, and this is what we're going to be hearing, okay? Now, when we bought this property here, our realtor told us, he convinced us not to go to Penfield to come here, because he said this will always be farmland. They will never do anything but farmland, so this is why we came here. And now, I look at this, I looked the other morning, like Paul Kubridge said, you seen the deer and all the animals? But that's what I see. For my second story, I'm going to see their roof line. Okay, that's all going to be gone. Okay, I took a church member down the street on 104 because he couldn't understand when he said, "What's the big deal about the greenhouse?" I said, "Let me show you." I took him down the street. I showed him the one on 104. He had no words for it. His mouth was open. I said, "How would you like this 7 times to be across the street from my house?" He said, "I don't think I would like it." So that's all I got to say. And then you want us to embrace it, to love it, to accept it. By the time they get done, your trees are big. I'm going to be reaching close to my 80 years old. And I don't know where I'll be by then, but that's all I got to say.
Good evening. My name's Taylor Chamberlain, 1708 State Road. I have 3 minutes of something new. We have we all pledge allegiance to the American flag and the federal government. What I wanted to let you know is there's a 1990 Native American Graves and Repatriation Act that says that and this falls in an equal opportunity zone which receives federal funding, and there's locally here, this is the Seneca Nation of American Indians, and they should be consulted on this. I haven't heard anybody mention anything about that. So I just wanted to mention that they have a local, Also, there's the Article 6, Clause 2 says that the Constitution federal laws made pursuant to it, treaties under the authority constitute the supreme law of land, and this is what we're pledging our allegiance to. So the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act said that anything that receives federal funding, they must go ahead and start repatriation with any remains, any cultural items, bones, and whatnot. And the Seneca Nation has established, because it was recognized by the Tribal Historic Preservation Office was established in 2000 after the nation received recognition letter from the National Park Service. That agency is charged with facilitating the nation's involvement within Section 106, National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, and also the NAGPRA of 1990. These acts mandate that any ground disturbing federally funded projects must consider it and its potential impacts to historic properties. So I would just ask, please consult with them. It's our federal responsibility, our responsibility as citizens, and to uphold that treaty, which is the supreme law of land. Thank you. Also, this is my anniversary to my wife, Kate. I love you. 8 years. It was tonight coming to do that. So, sorry, babe, we'll get the romantic dinner another night.
Okay, there is no one else to speak? Okay, that being, we'll close the public hearing. Comments are done. We'll take a recess here for a few minutes. I think we all need to take a little bit of a break. And then we'll reconvene, and then we can get results or comments from the applicants and see where this thing is going. Okay, so let's take about a 10-minute break, okay?
How much time?
Okay, I guess we're all set. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll reopen the public hearing to allow the applicants to respond and answer to any questions and concerns everyone had.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Jerry Dolton. I'm the attorney and agent for CEA Fresh Farms, LLC. Peter and I will try to respond to many of the comments that we have. We'll try to be brief and try to be concise. But one of our major objectives is to try to keep everything on point in terms of what we're dealing with. We've heard a lot of emotion in the room. We do appreciate the public comments that we heard and received. But we are dealing with a process which is governed by the local and state laws. So I will first address Mr. Tantillo's points, which were well stated, but we have responded in writing and we will put it on the record here as well. Dealing with the Flack versus Colden case, that involves a deer farm. The section that we are talking about relative to seeker talks about agricultural farm management practices, not a deer farm, not a solar farm, not any other type of farm, but in fact we are talking about an agricultural farm. That case is not relevant to what we are talking about here this evening as it relates to seeker. As an agricultural farm use, We are a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act as an agricultural farm management practice, including construction, maintenance, and repair of farm buildings and structures. So I'd like to put that one to rest as best we can in dealing with the type 1, type 2. What that does is that pretty much goes to a lot of the comments of Mr. Young, who really set forth a whole lot of information relative to seeker and seeker consideration for actions which are not a type 2, which are actions which are type 1 or unlisted. The one thing that was misstated in those comments relative to seeker is that if you are a type 2 action, you are a type 2 action. We talked about physical alteration of more than 10 acres as something to be looked at. The fact of the matter is that the type 2 list has certain categories of items that say, if you exceed the type 1 thresholds, then you are a type 1. The agricultural farm management practices does not have that limitation. And that's in the generic environmental impact statement, which was done for the seeker revision of the regs. As we understand it, is going to wind up going into the seeker handbook sometime in the near future. The compliance with code issue is kind of interesting also. The compliance with code is very clear. We're in a large lot district. Large lot district specifically says agricultural uses are permitted. Agricultural uses are defined in the code as uses of lands and buildings in raising or production of agricultural products and greenhouse projects. All of a sudden, we got pulled into this discussion of customary agricultural practices and saying, well, guess what? You're not a customary agricultural process. Well, there's a reason why there's a separate definition for that in terms of customary agricultural operations permitted in all zones. Because agricultural uses as defined are not necessarily allowed in every zone, not enumerated as a permitted use in every zone under the code. It is not an enumerated use in the industrial district, for example. It is not an enumerated use in the OP district, the CO district. It's not, for the most part, it is a permitted use only in the residential districts under the code, and that's what we have to work with. We're working under this particular town code. So to that extent, we are clearly an agricultural use, because agricultural use is defined as the use of lands and buildings in the raising or production of agricultural products and greenhouse products. That's what we're doing. We're doing it in a greenhouse. We're doing agricultural products. So to that extent, we are clearly within the law. The lot coverage argument, which is part of the supplemental regulations for agricultural uses, clearly states that all zoning provisions and restrictions as to single dwelling units of the residential R3 district shall apply. We're not talking about the provisions related to single dwelling units. For example, what that is meant really to cover, as this code is defined, is that as part of agricultural uses, you can put up houses for people who work in the farm, be they the owners, be they laborers, whoever they may be. You can put up single-family houses under the code, and for those houses, you have to conform with the R3 standards. For example, there is a restriction as to the size of units. As you know, under your code, in R1, R2, R3, there are different minimum sizes of the units themselves that they have to be. In the R1, they have to be bigger, R2 a little bit smaller, R3 a little bit smaller. What they're saying is apply the R3 standards as it relates to that. In terms of the site plan review facts that Mr. Tantillo referenced, we have in our engineering report addressed
all the 20-plus standards. We can go through them at length. We decided not to do them. We believe that it is very sustainable that we have met all of those standards and that appropriate findings can be made with regard to that issue. So that is the primary rebuttal to the arguments that Mr. Tantillo has put forward. Again, Mr. Young's comments went extensively into seeker, and we appreciate certainly the detail and the work that went into that. However, a lot of those issues, or all of them, essentially dealt with an action which requires an environmental review beyond type 2. Because this is a type 2 action, it doesn't go there. You don't go to 617.7 and all the standards they have for determination of significance, because that deals with actions that are unlisted or type 1, which require further environmental review. Same with the consideration of the comprehensive master plan. What you are here for tonight is for site plan review. The code is explicit in terms of what you're supposed to look at as part of that standard. And again, those 20 some odd standards are there. Notably absent from all of that is the issue of property values. And there was some discussion of that. Not a whole lot of proof being adduced relative to impacts on property values. The gentleman from Albion, I'm not really sure what the context was of what was being talked about, but in fact, there are a lot of developments where people come in and say it's going to affect my property values. We've dealt with that many times within the town of Webster. In the project on Ridge Road near Jackson Road, where a large berm was created, and everyone on the other side in Pepper Ridge subdivision said it's going to totally obliterate our property values. Almost any commercial use which is near residential also has that same element. So over and over again, we see that argument. And maybe that is why it wasn't included in the enumerated list, because it's really hard to pinpoint and to come to any conclusion relative to those issues. The light issues that we talked about, and we showed that picture that was up on the board. We didn't show it. It was shown up on the board relative to what the roof was in some place in Europe. And I'm not sure what the context of that is. But one thing that's notable is there didn't appear to be any light which was emanating from it. There may have been some light which was at the surface of it, but I didn't see any light emanating from it. You can do some magic with pictures. I am not absolutely sure what that was meant to show. With regard to the argument dealing with archaeological and the treaties that we have, if the gentleman and his wife are still here, I want to wish them a happy anniversary as well. But there is a state standard that we have relative to archaeological review. The state puts out a map. It's referred to as a circles and squares map. If you are within the circles and squares map, then you must conduct at least a record search, and then perhaps an on-ground search for any historical artifacts. The state has done that mapping. We are outside of that mapping, and that is reflected in the materials that we provided. So no further archaeological review was necessary relative to that issue. One other issue which was raised, that was thrown out, was there must be blasting. The fact of the matter is, we have done our analysis relative to the site. There is no blasting which is necessary as a result of this particular project as it is shown. So, in short, it's our view that we have met all the standards, that we are permitted use, that we are a type 2 action, that we can address all the findings which are required under the site plan review code, as well as dealing with the specific lighting code. We did want to bring in the shade structures so that you can see that they were opaque structures which will be utilized on the site. And for those that say, well, we don't know what the future's going to bring.
they really gonna use this or not gonna use this, that would be appropriate as a condition that these particular shade structures or an equivalent be utilized on the site. That fits within your power to condition approvals. With that, I'm going to step aside for a minute and see if Peter has anything more to add in response. I stole some of his, by the way.
Thank you, Jerry. So just a couple quick things, just to reiterate some of the points that were brought up. First of all, as Jerry pointed out, as it relates to the claim that blasting would be done, there were over 100 test pits and soil borings conducted on this property because we did want to establish where the rock profile was located on the property. That information is being provided to Commissioner of Public Works. That was a request coming out of the PRC review, but the plans we have provided note the bedrock elevations. And as Jerry pointed out, the point is the design was done to stay out of the bedrock, both with structures and underground utilities. So there is no blasting plan for this project. As it relates to the traffic, the only thing we wish to reiterate is that has been completely reviewed by the Monroe County Department of Transportation. They are the agency of jurisdiction, and they have issued their findings, which is that no further study or analysis is required, and that the highway system has capacity that is managed by the county to receive the traffic from this project. As it relates to water use, there was a claim made about how much water would be used at this property. The engineer's report provided to you provides that calculation. It is not 8,000 gallons per hour. Okay, it is approximately just over 5,500 gallons per day. The water supply to the hydroponic operation does come from the irrigation ponds. That is the main source of water. And as that relates to, there was a claim about wastewater flow. 90% of that water leaves in the lettuce. Lettuce is primarily water. That's where it goes, and that's how it leaves the site. It is not introduced into the wastewater stream. A couple of other things, last two things. First of all, as it relates to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the New York State DEC permit process, we acknowledge those permit processes are required. Those permit applications are underway. As we've mentioned, we have already been meeting with the Corps of Engineers and the DEC. What is being requested here is not out of the norm. We have done this in the past. It is within the parameters of the permit process, and that will be fully vetted by the Corps of Engineers and the DEC. The last thing, there was a concern or claim made about diverting runoff because it would be going into the irrigation ponds and thus not to 4 Mile Creek and or the wetlands. We would point out that this property represents a very small percentage of the 4 Mile Creek watershed. There's actually over 700 acres of upstream drainage area that feeds 4 Mile Creek that will continue to feed 4 Mile Creek. The area we're talking about that would get diverted to the irrigation ponds represents less than 10% of that watershed area. And not only that, there will be runoff from the site itself that will continue to be provided into the stormwater facility and directed to 4 Mile Creek. The Corps and the DEC will completely vet that as part of their process because that is of something that they have, that they take watch over. But the point is that the watershed supply to 4 Mile Creek is still going to be provided even after this project. The last thing we'll say is, and Jerry reiterated too, the engineer's report submitted provides all of the necessary calculations that were required by the site plan application standards to provide the engineering support for the design that's been submitted. So, thank you.
We understand that the planning board for public hearings, we do think there were two full citations.
Yeah, I think what we did, I think we closed the public hearing to speak, but then we gave everybody the opportunity to speak. Then we reopened it, obviously, which is required, to allow the applicants to respond to those comments. So that's where we stand with it.
What we would request now is just a brief opportunity to correct what we think that are two very quick new citations.
Okay, come on up.
Initially, Jerry started by saying that several of the concerns that the residents of Webster raised today are outside of your review. based on the 23 factors in the code. 228.6 specifically says that the planning board's review shall not be limited to these 23 factors. So everything that was raised to you guys tonight is properly within your review authority. So Jerry's suggestion that, for instance, property values cannot be considered is incorrect under the code. And then John has one more.
So one of the statements I heard was not a complete statement, and it has to do with Ag and Market Law 305, which says that the town can use its own judgment if it's shown that the public health or safety is threatened. It can contravene the input from the Ag and Market Department. And I'll read the statement. Local governments, when exercising their powers to enact and administer comprehensive plans and local laws, ordinances, rules, or regulations, shall exercise these powers in such a manner as may realize the policy and goals as set forth in the Ag Market Law, another citation, and shall not reasonably restrict or regulate farm operations within ag districts in contravention of the purposes of this Article 305, unless it can be shown that the public health or safety is threatened. And every piece of presentation that Tim presented identifies a threat. Thank you.
I have a lot of respect for both John and Don. And Don, it's been a long time since we've worked together, but you know, just to clarify on a couple of points, I did not say that something was outside necessarily of your jurisdiction, but what I said was that it was not put forth in the code as one of the standards that you shall consider, which basically is a pretty exhaustive list in the whole scheme of things. So that is the point. And to the same point, as we go forward on dealing with property values, neither side really had any major proof on exactly what the economic impact was going to be of this particular use. With regard to Don's statement on Agricultural Markets Law 305, which is commonly referred to as the right to farm law, and since we are a farm, logically, it's more for our benefit generally than it is for somebody who is opposing a farm. They say that you can contravene the Ag and Markets Law, but nothing says that you can contravene exactly what seeker says. And our position is that seeker is very clear and explicit that this is a type 2 action. And to that extent, seeker is not implicated. It doesn't mean that you can't take a look at some of these other issues. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that brings you to a head. This is not fun up here, let me tell you. I think one of the first things that we need to do as a board is to determine if this is an LL district, and our determination needs to be if it is agricultural. I guess we're in agreement with it being agricultural.
Yeah. There's been a lot of arguments on both sides. Should this be a type 1 action? Should this be a type 2 action? The real basis behind this is this really an agricultural activity? We have presentations on both sides that talk that it is and it isn't. We also have, I'm not sure what the actual term is for it, but a lot of people keep calling this an industrial operation. It's kind of a tactic that goes into play when you want to sway an opinion by something. You keep repeating that item until everyone believes it's true, but it may not necessarily be true. For these types of activities, as a board, we have to look at other sources, rely on council, rely on our own input, and research that we've done, information provided tonight, and we had some very good presentations really on both sides of the spectrum on this. But we do have to go back to those that we do have a letter on file from the state of the Ag and Markets that says that this is an agricultural activity and that it meets that definition. We also have a letter from DEC that simply says that it's up to the town planning board to do actions on seeker. I had the impression that someone was trying to get DEC to make a decision for us, but they don't have that authority. They also don't police the seeker decisions that are made by the board. Everyone has gone through on both sides, and they keep talking about the sections in the Ag and Markets Law in regards to what is an agricultural activity. And that definition is actually very broad. If you go onto the Ag and Markets website and read through all the background information, what they consider is commensurate to an actual agricultural activity, everything that is proposed for the site is listed on there as an agricultural activity. Some other things that should be aware of is that even on the seeker form, under E1.1, talks about land uses and surrounding properties. One of the items on here is agricultural, includes active orchards, field, and greenhouses. So the seeker form itself includes greenhouses. Any kind of agricultural activity in order to get an agricultural structure up involves construction of some site, of some type on a property. Disturbance of land, whatever is necessary to put that up. It is part of the nature for making those buildings. There's some other things that we've looked at this quite often. We looked at it in the past on the previous project and on this thing. And everyone likes quoting the Ag and Markets Law. It's a good source it goes back to, but regardless of how you try to spin it, from my perspective at least, that this thing does meet the state's definition of the intended use of what an agricultural operation is. That's my opinion on it. It's something that the board itself can discuss.
I think we've tossed this around at earlier meetings and stuff when we spoke. There's two sides, obviously, to this whole thing. We've reviewed both sides. We've listened to both sides. We've got reams of papers from both sides. And yes, we did read it. We did go through it. I've got things here. My problem is I end up shuffling them and then trying to find it again to rehash it again. But it's all here and it's all been read. And I'm in agreement. It has to be considered as a type 2 action. I know there's opposition to it. There's, the neighbors. It's an emotional situation, very emotional situation for everyone. And we empathize with that. The presentations were done well, but we have to go by what's in front of us. And it isn't always a fun thing to do, as I said before. And I think that's where we're at right now. This being a type 2 action under the seeker rules, and this has been discussed over and over, I think this thing needs to move forward. Where it goes, we don't have that decision. We can move forward on this, and then it goes to wherever it goes to resolve it. We can't deal with that part of it. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels moving forward with it. You're okay with it? You guys are okay with it?
I've heard a lot of legal conversations. I'm not a lawyer. I'd like the board lawyer to make a determination whether he can do that on the spot or if he needs time to review case law or whatever lawyers do with this type.
In regard to?
Whether or not it is agricultural.
Well, it is. We know that, isn't it? I guess we can answer that. It's agricultural.
Well, certainly the letter that we received from the state indicates that it is.
Where it is, right here.
So from our perspective, that's good enough for
guess
you to make that decision?
I think the question that the board would have to answer is if the letter from the state qualifying this as an agricultural use is sufficient. Do you need more information, or are you content or satisfied that gives you enough information to make that determination? Because once you make that determination, I think the dominoes fall as to what secret track you follow.
So I guess a follow-up question is, did the state get all the information they needed to make a proper decision?
I can't speak for the state. I can't speak for the state.
This meeting's been closed, please. Doesn't help anyone here.
So I guess the question is, do you need more information?
I don't need more information, I just need to understand that the people that need more information have everything that they've gotten that they need to make the right decision. I'm not a lawyer, I don't want to pretend I'm a lawyer and say, everyone has had their very good opinions, well articulated, but there's still a difference. And in my opinion, reasonable people, given all the facts, can come to the similar conclusion. But I'm not sure that the state's been given all the facts to make the right decision. So I don't know the answer to that question.
No, the meeting's been closed, sorry. We all have our opinions, so what you'd be giving is that right now. I could ask them, and they'll give me the other side too, so. We need to hear it.
We'll maybe review it then before you vote. Yeah,
There's nothing.
review this. You know, that's your job. You wouldn't give me the extension point out that. Talking about all of our whole meeting, I hear what he's got to say.
So I'm taking a look at the letter that comes from the Ag Markets Law, and the letter that came back comes back and it describes the project really as an entirety, and it covers the key aspects that would have been presented here tonight and at previous meetings. This is something that's in the public record. I don't necessarily need to read this letter. Really essentially goes through the entire outline of what all the presentations were. It goes through and it does what both parties have continuously done all night long. Like the section 301, 11 of the Ag Markets Law that talks about what is agricultural activity, and it specifically says that green leafy greens are considered a vegetable and considered an agricultural activity. Greenhouses are part of an agricultural operation. It mentions that in the letter too. So based on the letter itself, it appears that they had sufficient information about the project given to make this determination.
Show my neighborhood. That's an outdated map. Your job to protect.
Excuse me. What I am reading to you is, and summarizing for you, is a letter that was received on November 11th. And again, it completely outlines the project as has been presented tonight in their letter. And it indicates that they are fully aware of what the project is and all the aspects of what the project is. In their opinion, that this thing is an agricultural activity.
It's the first one in the state.
And also, to speak too, there's been similar comments about the town code. Every 7 or 10 years, Department of Agriculture and Markets reviews the agricultural districts in each town. The last one that was done in 2015. They cited the town of Webster code as being potentially restrictive towards agricultural activities and some of their requirements that they have for a parcel. So you can't fall back necessarily on the town code because that in itself has aspects that do not properly apply the Ag Markets Law. These particular items for the code itself, we're dealing directly with the sale of produce on properties. The town code has some kind of restriction against it, but that's allowed under the Ag Markets. The packaging, the sale of any kind of on-site agricultural produced product can be done at that facility. So again, this agricultural markets letter that we have, it really does, to me, it show that they are fully aware of what the project is.
I mean, from my perspective, Tony, if the board were to deny the application, we'd face an Article 78 from Mr. Goldman. If we were to approve the application, Mr. Tantillo is going to file an Article 78. So we just have to follow the law. And the reality is, I think I could defend the Article 2. We have the state, or type 2 action. We have the letter from the state. We have a lot of corollary evidence to support that. But I think if you, as a board, make that decision that this is an agricultural use, I'm prepared to defend.
Excuse me. Can I make?
No, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to express, if I may, just a point of interest in regards to, it's very quick and simple. We all agree that this is agricultural. There's no question. You're growing plants. But we're embarking on something very new here. It's been expressed that this has not been done anywhere in the United States.
Okay, hold on, stop.
But
No, I'm not going to let you finish. We've heard this before, so stop.
You haven't heard what
I'm not going to hear you now. I'm going to have you taken out. I asked you to please be courteous and respectful.
And I am, and I asked you.
And the meeting has been closed. Comment period is closed. Ma'am, will you please stop?
My 9-year-old?
She's right.
Stop now. All right, we're going to move on with this. Go ahead. I will start going with this, and you can bring it to court. Okay, if that's the way you all feel, then we can keep moving.
Are you swinging the vote?
Yes.
I'm not swinging any vote. I'm asking to be courteous. Someone was talking.
You were predetermined before you even got here, especially the gentleman on the right. It seems he had a predetermination. Why did we bother sitting through this? It was senseless for us.
Okay, you know, those are the kind of comments I'm sorry to hear, because none of that is factual at all. And those are comments you're making, and you're insinuating things that are not factual. Simple as that.
Let him talk, and then we'll...
Okay. Go ahead. Are you folks all, are you done now? Okay, then good. We'll bring it back up here. Thank you for the courtesy. Where were we even now? So you're comfortable with this on a secret? Then I would make a motion that we proceed with a secret determination.
Resolution, the Town of Webster Planning Board considered the request by applicant CEA Fresh Farms to construct a greenhouse facility on 140.8 acres of land consisting of 3 parcels on State Road, having SBL numbers 081.03-1-20.112 and 081.03-1-19.2 and 081.03-1-19.1, located in the Monroe County Agricultural District, MONRO 006. The greenhouse facility consists of greenhouses, irrigation ponds, stormwater management facilities, packaging, storage, office space, loading docks, and employee and visitor parking. Section 617.5 of the State Environmental Quality Review Regulations defines a Type 2 action as having been determined under environmental conservation law not to have a significant impact on the environment. Section 617.5C lists actions that are not subject to review under SEQR. Included under Section 617.5C4 are the agricultural farm management practices, including construction, maintenance, and repair of farm buildings and structures, and land uses changes consistent with the generally accepted principles of farming. Based on this and the information contained in the full environmental assessment form, Part 1, dated October 17, 2019, the Planning Board classifies the proposed action as a Type 2 action under Section 617.5C4 of the State Environmental Quality Review Regulation. Therefore, it is not subject to further review.
Okay, that being a motion, we need a second.
I'll second it.
we have a second?
Who seconded that?
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Rampy? Mr. Nixel?
Nay.
Mr. Koso?
Aye.
Hope you see the lights.
Mr. Arena? Mr. Hashani?
Aye.
You're our leaders.
Well, then, well, we've got a resolution for approval, we have a resolution for denial. I'm gonna make a resolution, okay, there it goes. I'm gonna make a resolution for the preliminary approval for the CEA Fresh Farms LLC site plan approval, whereas the applicant has package contained all the requisite information required under the code for such application, and whereas the application was referred to the Monroe County Planning Department pursuant to General Municipal Law 239M, and whereas Monroe County reviewed the application and provided comments, whereas the town of Webster staff comments have been made in the application, and whereas the Monroe County Department of Transportation, who has jurisdiction over State Road, has provided comments and determined that based upon the traffic information, no further traffic analysis is required. And whereas a sketch plan review of the application was conducted by the Planning Board on November 19th, and whereas the Planning Board has adopted a resolution establishing that the proposed action, which is the subject of this application, is a Type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act as an agricultural farm management practice involving construction of farm buildings and structures, and whereas the public hearing on the application for the preliminary site plan approval is conducted at the Planning Board on December 3rd, this evening. And now therefore, the Town of Webster Planning Board makes the following findings of fact. That the number one, the subject property is located in an LL district, a single-family residential district. 2, agricultural uses are an enumerated permitted use in the LL district. 3, the subject use is an agricultural use as defined under the Webster Town Code as the use of land and buildings for production of agricultural products and greenhouse products. Number 4, the Planning Board has reviewed the considerations contained in Town Code 228-6, makes the following findings in response to each of the code considerations as follows. The adequacy and arrangement of pedestrian access, circulation into and through the site, including separations of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, the location and design of walkways, structures, control of intersections, where vehicular and pedestrian traffic converge, and overall pedestrian convenience and safety in the site, and the adequacy of facilities designed to assist handicapped persons using the facility. The property is privately owned and maintained without current availability of public transportation. There will be no customers coming to the site. Employees and visitors will access the main entrance to the facility from State Road and proceed to their parking lot. Each greenhouse farm has adequate parking spaces adjacent to each farm and loading docks associated with each farm for shipping and receiving. The CEA site plans have been prepared in accordance with the most recent standards and specifications of the Town of Webster and the appropriate Monroe County and New York State agencies. Accessibility, parking spaces, and appropriate signage on these spaces will be near each of the farm's main entrance doors. The adequacy and arrangement of vehicular access and circulation into and through the site, including separation of pedestrians and vehicular traffic, and the location and design of driveways, drive aisles, and curb cuts. The CEA site plans include access drives and drive aisles, and they have been prepared in accordance with the most recent standards and specifications of the Town of Webster and the appropriate Monroe County and New York State agencies. Vehicular access to the site will be from the State Road, with 2 entrances being proposed to provide a main entrance for access to parking, shipping, and receiving for the facility, and a second entrance for emergency vehicles to access the greenhouse farms. Both entrances meet the distance site requirements. A central vehicular corridor is proposed on site and is large enough to accommodate and accompany employee visitor parking, as well as truck traffic for shipping and receiving to the greenhouse farms. C, the adequacy, type, and arrangement of trees, shrubs, and other landscaping on the site for use as a visual shield and or noise deterring buffers between adjoining land uses or as natural design elements to enhance the aesthetics aspects of the project. And the project design has been prepared with buffering and screening in mind. The existing tree lines, hedgerows, vegetation along the properties, east and west and south property lines will be preserved. And this existing vegetation is a density and height to effectively screen the property from these vantage points. Per the planning board suggestion, the application has also added additional planting along the northeast and northwest property lines to further help screening the homes adjacent as requested by the board. The project design proposes a berm and landscape plan for the state road frontage of the property, which wraps around the east and west sides and provided additional buffering. The berm will be graded to a height and plantings with vegetation at a density to provide an effective buffer to the north. The grade and height of the landscaping will screen up to the top of the approximate 26-foot high greenhouses. In addition, the greenhouse farms are set back further from the road than is required by town code to increase the effectiveness of the berm and landscaping to screen the project. And D, in the case of an apartment, building, townhouse, or other form of multifamily dwelling, the adequacy of usable open space areas for playgrounds and or other recreational facilities, which is not applicable to this. And the adequacy, location, and design of parking facilities, loading and unloading areas, and docking facilities. Parking has been designed to be adequate and not excessive to the needs of the farms. The location of the parking areas are internal to the site and access to each greenhouse farm. The design is in accordance with current design standards as to the size of parking spaces and aisle widths. The design of the loading and unloading area are in accordance with standard practices. And F, the adequacy of stormwater and drainage facilities. And the project will meet all or exceed Town of Webster and New York State DEC standards and requirements in regard to the stormwater design and discharge from the project site. There will be 1 on-site stormwater management facility and 2 green infrastructure bioretention areas. The stormwater management facility, in addition to the 3 irrigation storage ponds located on site, will be utilized to collect and attenuate the increase in runoff volume from the proposed impervious surfaces added to the project site. The design is completed per municipal and New York State DEC standards to ensure that the runoff does not contribute or create a potential situation for flooding. The project design maintains all current drainage patterns on the project site, including receiving off-site contributing drainage and not exceeding the capacity of downstream structures. The location, arrangement, size, and design of buildings, exterior lighting, and signage. The greenhouses are placed with substantial setbacks to the state road and the side property lines. They are arranged in a logical pattern to encourage efficiency in operation and to maintain disturbance, or to minimize disturbance. The design of the buildings are of high quality with no exterior lighting except for parking and loading areas for safety, which will be LED dark sky compliant fixtures. Internal lighting will be LED and directed downward with shade structures implemented to design nighttime lighting effects. Signage is undetermined at this point, but will be only utilized to identify entrances as no sales are to occur on site. No sign variances are contemplated. A separate sign package will be submitted to the town for review and approvals at a future date. The adequacy of water supply to the site and sewage and refuse disposal facility, which is H, is the project will connect with the existing Monroe County Water Authority public water supply that runs along State Road that provides adequate capacity to serve the developer's needs. A master meter and the backflow preventer are proposed to be installed in a vault at the project entrance where the fire and domestic services will split to serve the farms. There are 2 private hydrants proposed on site. The water supply calculations provided to the Monroe County Water Authority show that the system is capable of providing required pressures for each greenhouse farm service building, hydrants, and for the building sprinkler system. The project will be served by a private sanitary sewer system, which will connect to the municipal sewer system at Burrow Hill and State Road, and the Webster sewage treatment plant has sufficient capacity to handle the additional sewage that will be generated by the project. Connection via a sewer force main to an existing municipal manhole approximately 4,600 lineal feet west of the project site will be constructed by the developers. In additional land plantings along the the project is not intended to impede on the solar access of adjacent properties. The greenhouse farms themselves are made of glass side panels and roof. The height of the buildings will be approximately 26 feet, are no greater than a 2-story home, and the proposed setbacks exceed the minimum established by the LL zoning district. And J is the protection of adjacent properties and public health against noise, glare, unsightliness, and other objectionable influences. The answer basically is the construction of the project may result in a temporary increase in noise from construction-related equipment above ambient noise levels. Construction operations will occur during the construction phases of the project during work hours specified by the Town of Webster Town Code. And for building operations, noise will be contained within the structures and regulated by the town. Glare will be mitigated by the location of the greenhouses on the site and the shade structures on each greenhouse. The greenhouses are of the most modern design and will be shielded from public view by the berm on State Road, large setbacks, and the location on the site. K, the adequacy of structures, roadways, and landscaping in areas with moderate to high susceptibility to flooding and pooling and/or erosion. The subject property is not located in a flood zone. The drainage controls in accordance with the state and local regulations are being implemented. Grading of the site. The site grading has been designed for an earthwork balance to be achieved on site. Excess topsoil will be stockpiled and used for landscape berms with the excess being removed from the project site. The project site will be graded in phases over a 5-year time period, with landscape berms being planted and built within the first phase of the structure. The adequacy of all temporary and permanent provisions of control erosion from the site, maintain existing vegetation, wildlife habitats within the site. Construction of the project may result in a temporary increase in noise from construction-related equipment above ambient noise levels. Construction operations will occur during the construction phases of the project, structure to flooding and pooling. The Department of Public Works approvals. Significant construction shall occur within 1 year as deemed by the planning board to expire on December 2nd, 2020. December 3rd, I'm sorry, 2020, unless extended by the planning board at that time. Before the conditions of preliminary and final approval are depicted on printed on the final design plans. And 5, the engineer for the proposed project shall provide a letter of certification that all proposed work be completed as per planning board resolution of final approval before certificate of occupancy will be issued. And that's, okay, I already had that one, subject to resolution of final approved minutes. Okay, that would be a motion for a final approval.
Somebody call the cops.
There's a motion.
Get cops back here.
Mr. Coastal. Mr. Randy. Mr. Mixler. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Malta. Mr. Reed.
So carried. Okay, folks, I'm sorry. I mean, this has not been easy for anybody, and you guys have done a great job. I appreciate it.